Vanna, you can start now.
Okay. One second. Am I audible? I guess the screen has to be rotated. Done. Okay, so hello and welcome to the BSides Noida 2021 Virtual Edition Conference, Day 1. BSides Security Conference is a community-driven framework for building events for and by information security members. The goal is to expand the spectrum of conversation beyond the traditional confines of space and time. It creates opportunities for individuals as well as to both present and participate in an intimate atmosphere and encourages collaboration. It is an intense event with discussions, demos, and interactions from participants. It is where conversations for the next big thing are happening. I think you all must be knowing already about the BSides Noida conference, and that's why you're here. So, without wasting further time, let me just first introduce our guest today here. His name is Mr. Fardeen Ahmad. His background is he's a backend developer, a system architect, and a network and web pen tester. So, the topic today on which he is going to speak is the future of bug bounty hunting. So, before we start the conversation, before we start the entire session, I have an announcement to make, which will be interesting for many of you guys. So, we have planned to give away the BSides Noida goodies to our participants. Rules will be announced during the meeting. So, don't leave the meeting before it ends, as you could be the winner. And listen to the meeting very carefully, as because Mr. Fardeen Ahmad is a very intelligent man. We have already had an AMA session with them. Then, without any more delay, let's start the conference. Over to you, Mr. Fardeen. You can start sharing your screen and also switch on your mic.
Hey, hi. Very first thing, good evening to all the people, and welcome to all of you to this Beside Noida 2021. And today's topic of discussion, what like from my side to all the viewers, will be regarding the future of bug bounty hunting, like API penetration testing, and why it is the future of bug bounty hunting. Well, let's clear this thing first. The future of bug bounty hunting and API penetration testing has a very small relation. Okay, the very first relation is right now most of the web applications and all those things are getting patched up or having web application firewalls and all those things, and APIs are also getting strengthened up day by day. But in return, most of the things, if you inspect in the best way possible, then APIs are always going to be vulnerable in the if an attacker has to be taken then in the best way possible, if attacker's perspective is, and for developers and organization, it's the worst thing that you can ever deal with. Okay, so we'll be talking about it and we'll be moving further. So just an introduction about myself. My name is Fardeen Ahmad, and a security and a researcher, and also a programmer. Most of my work is in analyst part and research part, and in my free time I code. Generally, I don't code that much heavy products and all those things, small tools, and quite some contributions I've also done at GSOC also, some of it. Then apart from that, my recent achievement include one of the critical bugs that I found at CISF, and it was not at all related to NCIIPC. So don't take it in that way. I found it at CISF. It was a project that they were dealing with, and they were having some kind of issue with them. and I help them out, and eventually they'll be providing me with some kind of appreciation of token and all those things. And this was a very defense sector part of India, so it was good. Apart from that, I have secured Canva, Mastercard, and other companies also, and through which I've got some smaller, great bounties and things like that. So today's topic of discussion will be about what an API is, or application programming interfaces. Then we'll be discussing about its significance in web applications and mobile application and all those things. Then we'll be discussing about what are the types of APIs and what should be the implementation and how they are implemented. It will be a very brief discussion, so it is not going to bore you out. Then we'll be discussing about OWASP top 10 API vulnerabilities. We'll move towards bug bounty sections, where most of the emphasis will be on reconnaissance and finding your own first API vulnerability. Then we'll be dealing with the very approach, like my approach to the API penetration testing. Like, there are a lot of people and having their own approach, and I respect everyone's, but this is what I do. And then we'll be like dealing with difficulties and duplicates, because just let's face it, whatever we find it, like seriously, whatever we find it, people are like always like they found a bug and they found a flaw and they reported it in any RDP or VDP or any private products or projects of the organization, but they're not rewarded with it and they are very much agitated and irritated. We'll be dealing with that also, that how to overcome those stuffs, and we'll be concluding with a very strong motivation for all the new bug hunters which are watching, all the pen testers, and to the security researchers. So let's start, shall we? So application programming interface, aka API. Okay, mostly organizations have that belief that the best way to make the functionality as robust as possible is to implement the APIs with the application, and we have to make our application as secured as possible. But what happened is, when they are not able to implement APIs with respect to the applications, either web application or the Android applications, then it exposes a lot of vulnerabilities, and that vulnerability most probably is the sensitive information disclosure. Okay, now these information disclosure may be regarding to the company's assets. It can be PII, means personal identifiable informations, that is like regarding your name, email address. Many of you have heard, right, recent past months only, that Domino's got hacked and their whole data was leaked and all those things. That was nothing but a kind of API attack only. Okay, it was not regarding their application. See, one of the endpoints of the API, like one of the endpoints of the within the web application, which was corresponding to an API call, was malfunctioned. A small fuzz was done, and it revealed all the information that was to be not to be present in front of the public in the JSON form. And it was a very bad way of securing the stuff. It was the most insecure way possible. Like, big companies, not only Domino's, in fact Air India also, they had the same thing. So that's why people generally take CISO in a very, they're like, okay, he's speaking about information security and all those things, but organization don't take. Right now they are taking it, but previously they were not that much into security. They're like, okay, fine, we'll be spending like around what do you say, 1/10 of whatever we are earning through our revenues and all those things. But they didn't had that much of emphasis to make it as much clear as possible for the organization to be secured. But hackers are hackers, and they tried their level best, and they tried their level best, and they found out some vulnerabilities, and they were able to expose it. So now we'll be discussing in a very short way about what APIs generally are. Okay, now an API, people generally say that they are software. They say that it's kind of a system. It's like many people things virtually. These all are being saved in databases, and these databases are being called out through APIs. So APIs is nothing but an intermediary that takes your request, doesn't process it just directly directs it to the processing area, and just feed it to the database that yes, this is the part through which what you have to take it out. The API gets the information. So API basically is nothing but a socket. socket, and we our request is nothing but a plug. And when we plug it out and we just switch it on the fan or anything like that, when we are having a fan or something like that, when we just switch it on, the fan works. The same thing is with APIs also. One request, we put it in the API. Like for example, if we comment it, whatever we write, okay, whenever we are just sending it or we are just posting it, that button sends the API that yes, this comment is being made, and it has to be sent to the database which is to be stored and all those things. Okay, these are stored in temporary as well as the permanent basic, and there are a lot of things that is done through API. Okay, the work of API includes like sending and receiving requests, parameterizing inputs, and increasing the legitimacy of the functionality of the web application. So this is a very small implementation. There is an API gateway, okay, which works under a backend, and there are a lot of things that you can see. There is a microservices area, then there is a microservice 2 API area and 3 area, and then these are the sub application that works traditionally and normally. Okay, so the main part is what we have to focus on is how these connections are there. Okay, the very first connection is like, suppose this is an API, and when we just request it, like we put a like, or would we put a comment, or we just request to search on Google or anything like that, the API gets your input, it encodes it, it sends it back to the database gets to know about, oh, these are the things that he wants to know about. Okay, he wants to know about Instagram, he wants to know about Sundar Pichai, he wants to know about, so these are the things he API gets to know. API sent it to the database gets to know, database took out the search query, it feeds it through the API, and API calls back from backend to the front end your request. So that's how, like in the general way possible, APIs are working. Okay, so there are a lot of types of APIs. Like generally, people are building like from small APIs, big API, huge APIs. Those APIs that are to be run back and for one function or multiple function or multiple ways or paradigm to be used by the API to be implemented on the front end as well as in the back end. And these are like four types of basic APIs, like open API or public API, partner API, private or internal API, or composite API. Now, like we all know, we all are students, and we all were students as well as our students, and we used to be within our campus and all those things. So people generally of the campus, like admin and ID people, they use it. They generally use either partner API or internal or private APIs. Okay, so partner APIs like AWS APIs and Google APIs and all those things. These are common as a partner API, and when we are using some functionalities that are very much immensely to be used, which is quietly to be used as a, what do you say, for internal works and functionalities and all those things. So we are using partner API, and they are quite related to open API also. Then now open APIs are those APIs that are readily available. They can be implemented anytime. They can be used at as much as fast as possible. They are open source, and they are very much good. But when you are not dealing good with the APIs, then your information and the requests are handled, and there what vulnerability lies. Okay, and composite APIs are complicated APIs. So these are just basic things that you should know about, like general thing, and these are the things what you have to pay more emphasis on: the REST, the SOAP, and the RPC API. REST API is in the world right now is being used like most of the places, because it consists of a lot of functionalities. It provides good what do you say, URL payback. Like you are able to get the request in the most optimized way. Okay, it's not about the fastest way, but it is the most optimized way, because developers want optimization which is better or more important than finding any kind of hodgepodge kind of a API. And that hodgepodge kind of an API is nothing but a SOAP API. Okay, SOAP is one of the most, what you say, complicated API to be implemented. Okay, now REST API is easy to implement, but it's quite difficult to secure it in the most of the places. Like, okay, you'll be able to secure it, but there will be a lot of vulnerabilities that we'll be discussing on the REST APIs. Okay, that what are the different kinds of vulnerabilities that you're able to find on REST APIs. Okay, the SOAP API is very complicated. but it's complicated to implement. Okay, but it's much more secure as compared to REST API. But the where the problem lies is the SOAP APIs are the things that are right now being exploited in the best way possible, because SOAP APIs have to be, updated in the most generic way possible, but they take quite a long time to update and all those things. These are some developer stuff. And then third is the RPC API, which are generally used but not in that much of bulk. They are used just like that. Okay, so not that much. So we have to put attention over REST API as well as SOAP APIs. So REST APIs is optimized, SOAP API is also optimized, but not that much as compared to REST API. SOAP API is difficult to implement than REST. REST APIs are generally found to be vulnerable, but if a minute or if a major part, if one has to research on, then SOAP APIs, if not implemented properly, then it is vulnerable. So SOAP comes first and REST comes the second. So now we'll be discussing about the vulnerabilities. Okay, the OWASP top 10 API vulnerabilities. OWASP, just if I have to speak about, then OWASP started as a project by 3 nerds or 5 nerds. Okay, and then it became a community that is, like, seriously, that is paying a lot of payback to all the security researchers, and it gives the best thing that you can ever imagine, and that is the indexed vulnerabilities. Okay. API, or whether it's web or whether it's mobile, everything, they just, whatever they research it or find it out, they just create an index of it, and they just publish it, so that they can be, or they might be used in the future instances also. So OWASP is right now an organization, and that full form is Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP generally creates 10 creates an list of 10 API vulnerabilities. This one is 10. Like, more, all of it is consists of 10 only, and 10 indexed vulnerabilities. And these 10 indexed vulnerabilities consist of another kind of vulnerabilities that are being used generally by bug hunters for chaining and all those things. That's an exploitation part. That's quite a huge, but still, it should be known to the people. So the very first thing one should know about is broken object level authorization. Okay, what is broken object level authorization, or BOLA? So, like, we just call it. So BOLA vulnerability is just like indirect object referencing. Okay, now what is indirect object referencing? A kind of vulnerability where you are able to change the response, and in return what you get is the access of those information that is hidden. Okay, so what it is like, just example, you get a parameter, and there was your session ID or UID, and when you just change the UID or the session ID, you will be able to get to know about that a section of your access to the another, like, you will be able to access another account's information. When you're able to access another account's information, then that vulnerability is known as broken object level authorization, or IDOR. In web applications and APIs, it's a broken object level authorization. The second is the broken authentication, which is and will be till the time when people will be like normal humans will be programming web application and all those things. Then broken authentication is going to be the huge vulnerability to all those places, because most of the scanners are not able to scan the vulnerabilities that are found, that are within the broken authentication part, just like finding some secret tokens, or finding leaking some API keys and all those things. That comes between broken authentication as well as excessive data disclosure. Broken authentication also includes some two-factor authentication or OAuth bypasses, and there are a lot of things that comes under broken authentication. More of it is like general, as well as level third to level second kind of vulnerabilities, which are always paid in a huge amount if chained properly. The third comes the excessive data disclosure. This is like you are fuzzing an endpoint, and in return you get a place where you will be able to get some PII information about name or number or anything like that. regarding a huge list of it. The same thing that happened with the dominoes that I discussed way before. The fourth one is the lack of resources or the rate limiting. Rate limiting is a condition where a person that a request is not put to a limit. Let's, for example, if we want to see a YouTube video, okay, if we reload it like 100 times for like 5 minutes, then it is very much optimized, so we are able to see the video of YouTube, that same video. Now, for example, what happens if you within a 10 to 20 seconds, if you are able to, rate out around 500 requests. So within 10 to 15 seconds, when you're able to find, like, rate out the like 500 plus, then the the request that will be sent through the API will be in bulk form within the database, and it might make the database either crash or either it makes the web browser crash. But in most of the cases, generally it affects the backend of the database. Apart from rate limiting in this scenario, another scenario is the bulk request or no rate limiting regarding acceptance of the on the forms and all those things. So you can just automate this process. You can create your own tool and you can go over it. And the lack of resources, it's like there is no security header on that in such a way that there is no request parameter to be sanitized. So that's what lack resources is all about. Broken function level authorization, it is like when you are a user and when you're able to bypass your user privileges to admin privilege, then that is very just about what BFLA or broken function level or attacks is like SQL injection, command injection, cross-site scripting, and all those things. Improper asset management is about regarding if a scope has been given to you, and with proper fuzzing, if you're able to get to those assets which are being not included in the vulnerability management programs, but still they are critical. Okay, like for example, you have been given a part of researching on a particular topic or on a particular domain only, and you're able to get to know about, oh, okay, so there is a place where most of the sensitive token as well as passwords and now IDs are also present there. So this is a kind of improper asset management. And last one is insufficient logging and monitoring, and this is quite not found generally. It is like generated and mitigated through scanners only, so we don't discuss that much, but still that is also a vulnerability. So this was one of the bug that I found way before, like not here, like this is after some before time only. Like it was like, for example, I got one domain, and within domain there was an API.php part, and then there was a user parameter. Okay, and that user parameter was giving some kind of information. So I thought of why not to try an injection attack. So I tried it, and I was able to get to know about what their database was like and what the second parameter was all about. But the second version just reflected what the parameter it accepts it. Like it was not encoding it, but I was able to get to know about the backend. So I thought of why not to try the SQL injection. So I took it and sent it to the repeat part, and then just fuzzed it. And I just first sent it to the intruder part. Then I fuzzed the endpoint, which was this at about the select this one. Okay. I used the union part of SQL injection, which was good, the same thing. And then I was able to successfully get most of the schemas and collaborated part, which like information disclosure from it. So now we'll be discussing about finding your own first API vulnerabilities and exploiting them ethically. Like generally what happens is APIs, people generally regard APIs are okay, it's a new thing, and the implementation of API should be done very properly and all those things. And finding a bug in APIs is quite difficult, and sometimes people will say it's very easy, some will say it's only about the play of API keys. But in reality, finding an API vulnerability requires a lot of things. Like it's about 70 to 30 ratio. 70% is reconnaissance and 30% it's exploitation. Okay, so let's move on. I parameterized my reconnaissance methodology into these four parts. Okay, the first is the passive recon, second is active recon, third is exploitation for the recon, and After Effects recon. So the passive recon is like inspecting the scope. Okay, what inspecting the scope? For example, I got it like example.com or I got google.com. Okay, so very first thing what I will be doing. No, I should not be like testing Google and finding it through Google, but still Google helps a lot of it. Like 99% times, Google is very helpful in it. So passive incomes is like passive reconnaissance. It's like, inspecting the scope. We get at google.com, we find it through Google, we go to Shodan, we go to most of the places where we can find the sensitive information and the endpoints. Always remember, whenever you are dealing with API vulnerabilities, it should always be first the endpoints. Why? Because let's face it, the way it has been implemented, it will be very much normal, and it will look like, oh, there will be encoding or there is some kind of WAF applied and all those things. But the one of the best feature of a bug hunter or a bug bounty hunter is to dig deep as much as possible, even if it is a functionality. Okay, so inspect as much as possible through Google, see the source code, what is the call they are being doing it, and everything. So inspect the scope. The second is active reconnaissance. Now, active reconnaissance, generally what people do is the first active then passive. So it's your way of doing it. Mine is first do the passive and then the active one. The active one considers, like, this is what I generally find out, is to use the prime scanners. Okay, there are a lot of scanners in the market. I generally create I generally create some command interface and all those, like, not command interface, some my own tools. I use it. I do it manually. There are some prime scanners. I generally use Derb and Derbuster, Dersearch, and also in APIs. Sometimes it helps in finding endpoints through Sourav. It helps a lot. Exploitation part, then I've used it to the places such as GitHub. It's a gold mine, by the way. Okay, GitHub, Exploit, DB, and Nest. Like, seriously, it's a best place. These are the best places to get the exploits for finding any kind of vulnerability. Now, suppose API version 1 is being implemented. Okay, and API version 2 is in the research. So even if you get API version 1 and you just fuzzing the user place, and you just get a sensitive information about that this technology which is being used is quite outdated. So even if you report that thing, it's awardable. So it helps a lot. Like 70% of my work works in this way only. And the After Effects is like reporting the reconnaissance. Why reporting the reconnaissance part? Only because most of the bugs that are found are not critical, but these are the bugs, like, which are being made or being available to the people because of the developer's mistake. Okay, so most of the reconnaissance part is very much efficient, and it is very much important for all the new bug hunters as well as to the old bug hunters, because they all know about that reconnaissance being a very important part. Most of the sensitive key tokens and all those things, it's all available on GitHub, and when we just dig deep as much as possible, we get it. Then what are the endpoints that it should be tested? Suppose there is a endpoint which is tells about version 1 about any API.php, then we should change it, and we should look forward it, like over it. Okay, and then we should add any user parameter, the very second part. For example, there are a lot of parameters. There will be user, there will be destination, there will be IDs, there will be UUIDs. You have to find it. Like on GitHub, there is a complete list of it. On my Instagram, I'll be just posting it, a complete list of it, and through that you can get through it. Okay, and after users, you can just fuzz the endpoints. You can encode the this symbol, and it is going to be a very good thing. The third one is to get the etc. password, which is very much. By the way, the vulnerability that I got in the SQL injection was this second part only. Through this only I got it. The third one, sorry, I wrote it the second one. Okay, so the third one of API.php is the etc password, which is like, it is not generally found, but if found, it gives you a huge amount of like monetary award, a huge amount. Okay, the next one is the finding any parameters. These one, for finding an SQL injection and then finding a destination or anything like that. These two can be used for for cross-site scripting, also for injection attacks, any kind of injection attacks. Okay, and finding any file inclusions, you can also work over that also. Then approach to learn API penetration testing. Now, all the people who are in this meet should know that APIs, whatsoever you are dealing with, you have to and you should learn about what Postman tool is. Postman tool is a tool that is generally used by the developers to see the requests, the testing requests, as well as those requests that are to be used during the production as well as to the end line. Now, what happens is whenever a new developer or quite a new developer or some experienced developer, what they do is they are not, if they are not using Postman tool properly and they are not using it or implementing it properly on the website or in web application, then it itself pose a very big vulnerability. So if a tester knows about Postman tool, and it is always going to give him or the a niche, means a push, means a +1 point over the developers and security team to find a vulnerability, and do configure it with respect to Burp Suite. Okay, because there, let's face it, whatever the request which will be made through Postman tool to the Burp Suite, for the testing purpose, Burp Suite should be there with the Postman tool. The second one is the key to API pen testing is reconnaissance, as I discussed. If you know about GitHub, if you know about anything like that, GitHub, or you know about exploit DB, learn its functionalities and learn to dig deep as much as possible. Okay, because in reconnaissance part, you get most of the things. Like for example, you get an endpoint, you fuzz it through Derbuster, Derb search, and anything like that, and any tool like that. So most of the things, what you will be getting, or most of the the last point, means the last endpoints and last thing that you want is the vulnerability that you want to find out, like injection attack, anything like that. So that endpoint, if not fuzzed properly through Derburst or Dersearch, that endpoint, if it is not found out also, then you cannot fuzz any point. Like for example, if there is a user one, like suppose if this was the condition. If you don't know about user parameter, or even if you know user parameter and then this symbol is encoded, then your fuzzing is not going to end up in a good way, but rather you're going to be disappointed. What you should know is to learn how this encoding is being done, see the request how it is being made out. Okay, so reconnaissance is the very first key. Second is to select the start, mid, and end point of the generated API request. So the start point is this, the midpoint is this slash, and then open bracket, and this is the end point, which is the fuzzing point. When you are able to encode these things and then you are able to fuzz the point, you might find it some kind of sensitive information. Now if you double encode it and then do it, you might find another one, or even you won't be able to find it. So you have to test and try each and every method and each and every way to test it. Okay, the third one is to use of fuzzers, as I told, using Derbuster, Derb, or manual tools that I generally use it. But using fuzzers makes our work easy, but not confirmatory, because fuzzers generally give a lot of false positives. So you should be aware of these fuzzers. Okay. The second one is the generally flaws that like a general new person should find out is about SQL injection, about cross-site scripting, about BOLA, means broken object level authorization, and finding sensitive information disclosure, and improper asset management. Now, why I chose these vulnerabilities only, and why not? There are a lot of vulnerabilities that can be found out and all those things. Basically, when you'll be dealing with SQL injection or cross-site scripting or BOLA or sensitive information disclosure like PII and API keys, if API key is found and if it is exploitable, then, and if sensitive token found and if it is exploitable, then. So why only I found out these vulnerabilities? Because these vulnerabilities are all time hit vulnerabilities. This means that it is always going to pay you. Even if you found a duplicate vulnerability on any RDP or VDP, still they will be like, okay, this is working still, now we are working over it, but you found something, as a token of appreciation, will be providing you something. Okay, and cross-site scripting also. cross-site scripting does prey, especially the stored cross-site scripting. It's quite difficult to trigger it, but if it is triggered, it's a level 2 vulnerability, which is very good. Then broken object level authorization or BOLA, this is always payable. Even if you get a duplicate, still it is payable, because if like generally IDOs, like indirect object referencing, are always sanitized with inputs and changing the numbers and numerals to the another number to access the any other's information, or the user's information is not always available. Like once it is found, it should be patched up, and if it is not patched up, then it's the security team issue. So if they say that we have found this duplicate, or we have found this as a duplicate report, then you can inquire back and tell them that even if it is a duplicate, you should have mitigated it, but the security team hasn't. Then you should be awarded, like definitely. Then sensitive information disclosure regarding PII and API keys. Like if you find API keys which are exploitable in nature, like suppose many a times some of the students have also reached out to me and asked that, for example, sir, if I found an API key, how should I implement that or use that API key? I always tell them that, see, if you get an API key, don't just stand there and say that, oh, I got an API key, hooray, hooray. No, don't do that. Just never do that. Or you get a sensitive token, never do that. Okay. Try to exploit that vulnerability. Okay. Exploit that vulnerability, create a POC, write your steps of reproduction, and then pay it back to them. Or just send it back to them. What happens is, they get to know about your API keys and vulnerability. They'll be like, okay, we got it. So they'll be telling you this is not a sensitive information, and we'll be regarding it as whatever it is, an information disclosure. We respect your findings, but we can't reward it. So what at the back end, what they do, they remediate that thing. Okay, so try to find API keys and then get that API points through Google. Like you should know about how to Google stuff, and using Google, find that API endpoint. You can use Showdown also. Showdown gives you a bigger push towards reconnaissance. Okay, to that endpoint also. If you know good about Showdown, then it gives you more push. Use that API key, implement at that parameter, and then find anything which is regarding to PII. Once you get a PII, means personal identifier information, under the sensitive information disclosure, then you are always paid huge bounties, just like 5K or 10K, means 5,000 or $10,000 or more than that also. Okay. Recently, Tom Nom got it on API vulnerability only, like $39,000 something. And you and your best friend, no doubt, is GitHub, ExploitDB, Google, and Showdown. So use them as much as possible. This is Showdown. This is about Postman tool, and this is Derburster. So you learned everything about what should you know, but where to learn it, these are the places where you should learn it. Okay. Learning places is the Contra. Contra is the biggest hub right now to learn about API penetration testing. Like live labs are there, step-by-step things are there, like step-by-step introduction, step-by-step discussion. And they not teach, but they provide that platform where you can learn as fast as possible. This is the Burp Suite, means the Portswigger Labs that created Burp Suite tool. This is about Postman. Now, if you're not a reader, then go for these three things. Not these three, these two things. This one you have to know about. You should know about Postman tool. So Contra and Burp Suite, these two places is the best place where you should know what you should know about how to learn it. Like what is the place through which you should learn? Like what is the place where one can learn as a student? Okay. And if you're not a practical person but you want to strengthen your core, then these four books are very much good. Mastering Modern Web Pen Testing. There are many sections of API pen testing in it, like OAuth and all those things. API testing and development with Postman. This is going to give you a niche on about what API penetration testing is, about REST APIs, SOAP APIs, and different other kinds of APIs. Okay. My favorite is this advanced API security, because this completes most of the vulnerabilities and chained a procedure to how they are testing it. And then there is API security in active action, which is also a good normal book. Okay. So we are now in the last section of the presentation, which is dealing with the duplicates and difficulties. Just my own thought. I just wanted to say that I have found out like around 230 plus bugs in this pandemic, and out of which only seven was rewardable. Okay, so 230 bucks and seven were rewardable. Why? Because most of the like just 230 minus seven, 223 bugs. These all bugs were either marked as duplicate or not rewarded or will be rewarded by or something like that, but they didn't pay ping back, and they never paid back or anything like that. They didn't just cared about what vulnerability it was. Most of the vulnerability that I found out was injections, and then I found out about sensitive information disclosure and API key mismatchment, then mass assignment and all those things. So I didn't get anything in return through these bug bounties and stuff. Okay, I didn't get like 223 bugs. I didn't get anything in return. The first bug, what I found out, the very first bug in this API penetration testing, the first bug, what I found out, I was not awarded for that. It was said that thank you for your reference, but this is we got from another researcher, and we appreciate your work. That's it. This was the only thing that they found out. They just pushed out. So the very first thing what every new researcher should know is to leave the expectations about your monetary or awards or bounty or swag and anything like that. Okay. If you find a bug, just if you find a bug, that's a very good thing. Okay. On getting bug to be expected, just don't leave expectations about whether it is going to be triaged or not also. Just find a bug. If you're a new learner, just find your bug in front of yourself. Like you get a BOLA, means project broken object level authorization. You get a rate limiting only, the least one that I consider it. If you get a rate limiting, you find it, you create a POC, you use the steps of reproduction, and then just send it away. You don't have to think that much about of it. Okay. And just don't think about bounty and anything like that. First, learn as much as possible. Okay. And then quarrel about you should be given bounty or not. Second one is to read one flaw or bug at a time. Now, what happened is, suppose I've seen on LinkedIn, on many platforms, that what people do is they post it like, I was awarded for this bug. Even they don't disclose the bug, they just show that this much monetary award I was given. So if a person who's experienced bug bounty hunter or a tester, they'll be like, oh, fine, no issues. That's a good thing. You got a good amount of bounty. But for the new people, it is going to be a huge blow. It will be like, oh my god, this guy is earning so much, and how I'll be able to earn over it. Bug bounty is the first perspective is this: if a person is in bug bounty, the new people, and the person who are just wandering here and there, and if they get to know about this attracts bug bounty like new people towards the bug bounty hunting. They'll be like, oh, this is the place that I should do it. Like this is the thing that I should do it because it's giving a huge amount of bounty. Most of the people don't, or not at all, put their failures on the places. Okay, they just don't put the failures like, I got my reward after 7 reports, or they won't be saying that I got my first SQL injection after 300 plus vulnerabilities. They won't, because people want to show off to other people, so that see that I am earning this much amount of bounty, and people should congratulate him. So getting validation from others, it's better to get self-validated. Okay, even if another person found a bug, let it his bug only. He found it, it's his approach. One should concentrate on his way of finding, because let's face it, we should be available to only those people who are in front of us. Okay, like we should be very much, if even if we want validation, we should that want that validation also from only near ones, like your parents. Okay, if you show it to them, they'll be like, okay, fine, it's very good, it's awesome, then it's a very good thing. And if they are not appreciating also, like many times it happens that people don't appreciate. I told my mother once that I got this bug, and she was like, okay, that's good, did you hunt it out? Like, hunt it out? Yeah, I hunted, that's why I got the bug. And she was like, no, 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 why didn't you swat it out? You should have killed it. I'm like, no, 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 I didn't found that bug. I found a bug on web application, ma'am. And through that, my mother, she was like, okay. Then I explained everything what it is all about. She's like, okay, if you are free, then do it. Otherwise, if you're not free, then don't do it, please. Even if you're doing it, then it is going to be, it is going to give you a huge blow on your studies and all those things. So if you are a student, definitely do bug bounty hunting. I will always suggest you, because everyone wants to earn some cash and want to learn anything. Okay, so if you are in cybersecurity, okay, the big thing what you can do is to learn these flaws and apply it, so that you, even if you are like previous day, one of the speaker Tushar told in a very good way that if you find a flaw and if you are not awarded, still you can add it in your resume. If you are getting any kind of point or any kind of hall of fame, so you can add it in your resume. That gives more impression, because that money and swag is going to get fade away in some or the other way, but that reputation and that hall of fame is going to push you more in your life. Okay, third thing is thinking creatively. Okay, most of the bug hunters are different from each other because they have one niche. Okay, and they are doing it, and they are doing a very good thing. Okay, so for like, most of the creativity stuff, it is found there only. Like just for example, like this is the creativity part, uh, and there or any other researcher is there. Okay, we both are working constantly for each other, but our methodology is different. I can find a skill injection within 5 minutes, the other person can find it within 15 or 20 minutes, or even not, they cannot find out. So every person are different ways. Okay, the fourth one is to be ready for the best and get prepared for the worst, which is attached to the second point only. Find whatever you want to and don't compare yourself. And even if you don't get anything in return, still appreciate that thing. Okay. Fifth one is to have a ready to learn mindset. Don't think of earning first, think to learn first as much as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's only a demark record. If even if you get a demark record and you exploit it and tell it to the people, then still you will be given some account of bounty or kind of monetary awards. You might get it. So never stop learning. Okay, learn as much as possible. Finding new bugs are more rewardable sometimes, as I explained here. That find the duplicate bugs and getting an hall of fame and putting it in your resume, it gives you more bigger push than anything else. Then seventh is to find the difference between risk and vulnerability. What happens is generally people find risk and not vulnerability, and that plays a very bad thing. And at last, I would be just ending it by saying that read as much as possible, accept your failures, and use Google as much as possible. That is going to help you out. And if you want to reach me in any way, these three are places where you can reach me. I'm available on Twitter, Instagram, and you can put your questions on Quora also. And that is all from my side. And thank to all the people who were the viewers. I hope you learned something in return. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fardeen. It was a very, very informative talk we have had for past 1 hour. So it is the time for giveaway now. We will be having a link in the chat box on the YouTube chat box. So we'll be having it shortly. It is a Google Meet link, and as soon as you click it, you will be having some questions. and welcome to BSides Noida 2021 Virtual Edition Conference, Day 1. This is the second meeting we are having today. So, our second speaker for today is Mr. Sourav Kumar. I welcome you, sir, for being here. So, a little background about Mr. Sourav. He is a security engineer at CRED, and CRED is the company we all must be knowing about. The topic today on which he is going to speak is hunting prototype pollution in the wild. So, without wasting much time, I'd request Saurav to start his meeting. So, please go ahead,
Yeah,
Saurav.
thank you, Vandana, for such an introduction. Hello guys, hello everyone. I hope you all are doing awesome. And before starting the session, I would like to first thank whole BSides team, BSides Noida team, for all the efforts in organizing this event. Thank you so much, team.
Most welcome,
Now
Saurav.
moving on. Yeah. Guys, moving on to the topic, hunting prototype pollution in the wild. But before moving on to the topic, a little bit of intro about myself. So, my day job include working as a security engineer at CRED, and apart from that, I love to explore and do research on various security issues. Most of the time, I'm just curious about how things works and how we can break them. And currently, my interest lies on JavaScript related security issues. So, to connect, if you are interested in JavaScript and its security. I also do a bug bounty hunting in my free time. Below I've given my Twitter handle, so you can reach out to me anytime. So guys, let's dive into the topic. That was a bit of intro about myself. The flow of today's session will be like this. We will be covering prototype pollution on a very basic level, and then we will be seeing the exploitation things like how it could be exploited. Then I will discuss with you guys the cases which I found in the wild during my hunting, and then we will start looking at a different perspective of prototype pollution, like how insecure deserialization is related with prototype pollution, and how it help us in certain cases to exploit the vulnerability. And in the last, I will share with you guys some patterns which you can look for while hunting for prototype pollution, and then we will discuss the mitigation. First thing first, before starting prototype pollution, we should be like, why you should we worry about prototype pollution at the first place, right? Let me tell you about something, that prototype pollution is a very JavaScript specific vulnerability, right? And JavaScript is everywhere on the internet. It is a kind of duct tape for the internet, and its impact can be used like RC. It totally depends on the functionality of the application. These were the guys bit of motivation for every one of us to start worrying about prototype pollution, and we should be learning it. Guys, moving on to the topic prototype pollution, I have created a few points which I will discuss during the session, and and these points will give us a fair understanding of prototype pollution. I broke the whole concept in three points, and I will discuss them one by one and try to give you guys a better understanding of prototype pollution as a vulnerability, not as a feature. Guys, the first point is prototypal inheritance in JavaScript. Guys, first let me tell you that inheritance is basically a feature of object-oriented programming, right? But the inheritance in JavaScript is a bit of different than what we see the classic inheritance in languages like C++ and Java, right? So let me tell you how this is different. So basically, what happens in prototypal inheritance? We don't have like using prototypal inheritance, one object in a JavaScript program inherit all the methods and properties from the another object, right? So every object contains a hidden property called prototype, which we will discuss later in the session. That property contains certain methods and properties. Properties, and all the other objects in the JavaScript program inherits from the object.prototype, right? So basically, this whole phenomena creates a prototype chain, right? So these was about these. So these info was about prototypal inheritance in JavaScript, and every other object in JavaScript inherits methods and properties from constructor object. So constructor object is basically the object which is used to initialize every other object in your JavaScript program. So let me tell you a bit of how to identify a constructor object. So usually it is mentioned by like object and parenthesis is there. So you can see the last line, right? So in the last line, the O start with a capital O. So it's the uppercase, and then so it's the object. So we call it object constructor because every other object is initialized using this object only. Now, moving on to our second point, what is prototype and prototype chain, right? So, every object contains a hidden property called prototype, as we have discussed, as I have already told you. But let's see, like, what is exactly prototype is. So, you guys can see the example screenshot here. I have created an object, but right now this object is an empty object, right? I haven't defined any method or any property inside this object. But as you can also see, when I try to access a property ABC inside that object, then I'm getting undefined because I haven't defined any property inside my object. It is blank. But when I try to access one of the method called toString, so I'm getting like it's returning value. Like now I'm confused. Like okay, so I haven't defined any method or any property inside my object. So why it's still returning some value? So now let me tell you, every object contains, again, I'm reiterating this again, every object contains a hidden property called prototype, and that prototype basically contains all the properties and methods which object inherits from the constructor object, right? So and one fair point is like every object out there, every object in a JavaScript program inherits properties and methods from object.prototype, which is the prototype of the constructor object. And these result in a prototype chain between all objects. Like how? Like suppose I created multiple objects and all objects basically contains a hidden property called prototype. And inside that property, they contains all the inherited methods from their parent object, which is the constructor object. So ultimately, all objects connected together get connected together in a chain, and all of these were connected with their parent object. So in this way, how the whole prototype chain is created. You can also see in the below diagram, I have created an object, and again the object is empty. But when I try to print the contents of the object, then I can see there's another property called prototype. So I haven't defined any property, but it is still there. So this prototype property is being inherited from object.prototype, means it is inheriting it from its parent object. So you can also see like these all methods are looking a faded kind of thing. So it is just to indicate that these are the hidden methods and properties which is being inherited from constructor object. So that was about all about what is prototype and how prototype chain works in JavaScript. Now we will see object injection to pollute object.prototype. So guys, uh, basically what we do now, like we our ultimate goal is to set arbitrary methods or properties inside object.prototype. Because as we have already told that whatever methods and property are there in object.prototype will be inherited by its child object or whatever object you create inside your JavaScript program. So so if you create or set any arbitrary methods or object inside object.prototype, so it will be inherited by all other objects out there. So how we set arbitrary values inside object.prototype? So there are certain methods or properties known as magic properties. I will discuss two of them as of now. One is proto, so it is basically a underscore function, and the other one is constructor method, or you can also tell it as a key for now. So what happens when we what this proto do now? This proto basically points to it's the parent object. So whenever an object try to access this proto key, then basically it points to its parent object. So in this case, it is pointing to the constructor object. So in this way, we can access basically object.prototype. So guys, I'm reiterating this again, that proto this proto keyword or this constructor keyword or property helps an object to access its parent object. So in our case, it is helping an object to access constructor object, so that we can set arbitrary values. So behind the scenes, this proto function or this proto method works as a setter method. It used to set values in object.prototype. So let me show you the example. You can see the two screenshots on your screen. So the left one was I've created another blank object. Sorry, I've created another empty object, and within that empty object, I'm trying to I am using this magic property called proto. So by using obj.proto, I am accessing object.prototype. Now I'm setting a arbitrary method property inside that object, which is name equal to BSides Noida. So looks like I have set this value in object.prototype, and now you can also see uh, I have created another object, right? Object two, and once and again I'm trying to access the property name equal to BSides Noida from object two. So as you can see, it's printed its value besides Noida. So it means that when we use this proto keyword to set a arbitrary method in object or prototype, then basically name equal to besides Noida got set into the prototype, or we can say object or prototype. So as we already discussed that whatever value we set in object or prototype is basically inherited in all other objects out there. That's why when I created another object, which is object 2, I hope you guys are able to see the screen. So I have created another object, object 2, which is again a empty object, and I can even
Screen is visible,
uh,
Saurabh. Don't worry.
okay, and we can even access this object 2. Sorry, we can even access the property name equal to besides Noida from object 2 also. So you can also see in the right side of the image that when I try to print the contents of object.prototype, then you can see there's a new value or new property is being set there, name equal to besides Noida. So all the other methods which you are seeing is already there by default, but somehow we managed to add a set a arbitrary value or method inside object.prototype, and it will be inherited to all other objects out there via prototype chain. So that was about how we are injecting properties. So guys, if I want to sum up all the points we have discussed till now, then it nothing sounds like a bug, or nothing sounds like exploitation part here. Because here we are just utilizing the inheritance feature of JavaScript, or prototypal inheritance feature of JavaScript, to basically set arbitrary values in object.prototype. So by this is how inheritance works, right? So we are just exploiting how inheritance works, like not exploiting now, we are just utilizing how inheritance works in JavaScript. So now right now the question is if this is a bug or a feature. So till now it really looks to me that everything is great and it's only a feature, not a bug. But let me show you guys how it can be exploited. So exploitation part is here. I have taken one example here, using which I will show you guys the exploitation part, like what could go wrong. So first you will see on the left side of the screen, sorry, left side of the image, where I'm creating an person object. Inside the person object, I'm defining two properties: name, so name equal to Saurabh, and age equal to 22. Now now what I'm doing, I'm printing the output, and basically I'm calling a method on my object, which is toString method. So as we have already seen, that toString method is by default present in object.prototype, right? So so basically we are trying to access toString method, and as expected, we should be accessing that object, because my person object contains the prototype object, which is hidden, and that prototype object contains toString method. So I can access toString method on my person object, and it is giving me expected output. Now, as we have seen, we can use proto to set arbitrary methods in object.prototype. So what I have done, I use person. Now I am using proto property, and now I am pointing to now it is pointing to constructor object, or more precisely, I would say prototype object of constructor object. So now what I am doing, I am setting uh, setting the value of toString, right? So if you will see, then the value of toString was maybe it was defined as some kind of function, right? So it is a method. So if you'll go to object or prototype, then there.
Saurav,
Mhm.
can
Sorry.
you please zoom in your screen a little bit?
Oh,
It will be more convenient to see better
sorry, but
visuals.
I think in presentation I could not zoom.
All right, go ahead.
Yep. So, guys, if there is any issue, then I will also share the slide after the session. So you can also take a look at the examples for now. But for now, try to be with me and see what I'm
That will be
telling.
great. We'll attach the.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So basically, what I am doing, I am doing person.proto. So basically, now I am pointing to object.prototype, and now I am changing the value of toString method. So what I have done, I have assigned a random string to its value. So it used to be a function, but I assigned its value to random string. So now again, if I want try to access a toString method on my person object, then it's giving me a exception error, right? Why? Because this is not a function. This is now not a function. This is basically the value of toString is now basically a string, but we are calling it as a function. So that's why I'm getting an exception here. So suppose now you got an JavaScript based application, and you manage to find prototype pollution there. So now if you set any arbitrary value to any of these functions, and suppose the JavaScript program might be using toString method or any other method, then and you change its value to a random string, then these can lead to a DOS attack on the application. I'm reiterating. So this was the prototype pollution at its basic. We can pollute the prototype and set any arbitrary value in object or prototype, and we can let uh, the application return exceptions, so which will be ultimately denial of service. The application will not respond since we have polluted the whole code. So this was the case of DOS attack. Now let me show you what we can do if now what you can do on the client side also. So another the same example. Now here what I'm doing, instead of setting any random string to the value of toString, I'm setting another method called alert. So I'm setting alert method to the value of toString, right? So suppose in the real world scenario, you set the value of toString to alert method, and if the developer is using toString method anywhere in his program, which I've seen quite a lot, so then it will pop up an alert box there, and you will get a XSS in your application, or in your target. So guys, these was the two exploitation part which I wanted to show you. so that we get a fair understanding of how the inheritance could be exploited in JavaScript, and it could lead to different kind of vulnerabilities. So guys, it totally depends upon how what are the functionalities of the application. So the maximum impact which you can raise of prototype pollution is RC, which I think you might guys might have heard about Ghost CMS RC, which Oliver basically found an prototype pollution in Lodash library, and he basically exploited that to uh, perform an RCE on Ghost CMS, which is quite a popular CMS. So this was all about the exploitation part. Now you guys have a fair understanding of what could go wrong. Now I will discuss a few points about hunting in the wild, like what you should like what you guys should be looking at, or when we try to hunt for prototype pollution in the wild, then what are the vulnerable operations, like what are the operations which can cause prototype pollution. So the first one in our list is recursive merging of objects. So what happens in recursive merging of objects, we basically what we do, we have a source object and then we have a destination object. The source object can be controlled by the attacker. So what an attacker do? So attacker basically recursively do copy operation on the source object, and it try to copy all the properties or all the unique properties from the source object to the destination object, right? So you can also as here I am taking an example of one of the cases which I found in the wild. So it was basically a open source repository, and it's having a 134K weekly downloads and npm. So I found this vulnerable function set key pass, which is basically taking two arguments. The right one set object can be controlled by the attacker, and basically we are doing the recursive copy operation here, and we are copying the properties from set object to object. So you can see inside the function that we are using a for loop to recursively iterate all the keys inside the set object and try to see if there is any unique key. Then we are setting its value to object. So now let me show you guys what could go wrong again uh, in the right side. So in the right side of the pic, I've created a POC, like how we can exploit this. So what I'm doing basically, uh, here I'm the set function is basically vulnerable, right? So what I'm doing, I'm passing. So I have taken an object which is basically the destination object. So right now it's a blank object or empty object. Then the destination part, I'm defining a path. So why I'm defining path, because you can see the set object takes three arguments. One is key path, and then other argument is value. So basically, so in the path I'm mentioning proto.polluted, and I'm setting its value to just it's polluted. So now what will happen? Since during the recursive iteration under for loop, it will once a time came, then when it will be something like object.proto.polluted. So now it is pointing to constructor object, and since constructor object, and there will be a new property which is being set in the constructor object, and which is polluted equal to yes, it's polluted. So this is the new property which we are setting in the concept of object.prototype. Now now again you can see when we try to print or access the property polluted, then it will print the value yes, it's polluted, because now it is being set in object.prototype, and now it will be inherited by all other objects out there. So this was one of the example. Now in the second part we will see property definition by path, right? So basically property definition by path means for explaining this I am taking another example. So this thing I also found during my hunting in the wild, and so while looking at the source code I found that there's a function called set. So again this function is taking three different arguments, and what is happening here now, like here this function is defining a value by taking path as an argument. So the path and the value path part can be controlled by an attacker, and then we are using for loop to iterate the values and set the new value to object, right? So now again, the exploitation part is, or the POC is pretty much same. We have one side, we have the destination object, then we have the path proto.polluted, and then we have its value, right? So basically we are uh, setting proto.polluted, like we'll be iterating under for loop, and we'll be setting the value of proto.polluted to yes is polluted. But since proto is again used to access constructor object, or more precisely we can say object.prototype, so this polluted property will be set in object.prototype. So since now again it is set in object.prototype, so it will be inherited by all other objects out there. So guys, moving ahead, we will discuss about relation with insecure deserialization, like how prototype pollution is related to insecure deserialization. So before starting the relation part, let me tell you, like, if any one of you might not be much comfortable with deserialization of untrusted data, let me tell you that insecure deserialization is basically deserialization of untrusted data, uh, where and for our session we are more interested into insecure deserialization of JSON. So JSON is one of the serialization format, and we will be using the inbuilt function JSON.parse to deserialize the JSON string here. And if I tell you by the example, then the JSON parse has a kind of interesting behavior when it works. Basically, when it parses the serialized data JSON. So what happens now? Like, let's take two example here. So I created one object, object one, as you can see in the picture. So the object one basically contain. So in the object one, I am using this proto keyword, and I saw set its value to 123. Now I took take again another object, object two, and in now we are not directly defining a plain object. Here we are taking a JSON string, and now we are using JSON.parse to deserialize it to its plain JavaScript object, right? So now what will happen whenever whenever we deserialize a JSON string and using JSON.parse, then what will happen now? Then this proto is no more work as an magic property. Now this proto will act as a normal keyword or a normal property. It's no more a magic property when we are using JSON.parse to deserialize it, right? So you can also see here when I try to access object one.proto, then the expected output should be 123, because that's how we access what I say properties within an object using the dot notation. But it is showing me the object.prototype. Why? Because here they are considering it as a magic property, and by default it points to the object.prototype. But again, if I try to access this proto keyword using object.to, then I'm getting the expected value 123. Why? Because here now proto is not working as a magic property. Here basically it is now it becomes a simple keyword which is whose value is set to 123. So the guys, the whole idea here is that uh, while deserializing untrusted data, which can be controlled by a user, JSON.parse basically converts or parses proto keyword in such a way that it's no more behave as a magic property. So now let me show you how it could help us in a certain scenario. So basically it helps us in a certain scenario. So I'm taking one of the example from my hunting on the wild cases. So here I found there's a function called deep filling. So this deep filling is a vulnerable function, and what it's basically taking two objects as an arguments. So here we are not defining any path, right? We are not defining any value by path into an object. So basically here where we need to take two objects. The source object is being controlled by the attacker, and what we are doing, we are performing recursive copy operation on source, and we are basically copying all the unique properties from source to the destination. So now what will happen, कि, we just need to pass the uh, attacker's control object, which will contain the payload for prototype pollution in the source part. So now let's move on to the right side of the image, where I've created the exploitation of the vulnerable function. So here I am taking a payload, and this payload is basically a JSON string, right? And if you will parse this JSON string, then it contains a nested object, right? So now we'll see why we need to parse it like using JSON.parse, like, right? Why we need to deserialize it before we can merge. So let me tell you how this whole reiteration will work. So it will work in a way. So suppose in the first iteration, under the for loop, we will go to it will reach out to the first property, which is proto. So now we will see, okay, if object.proto exists or not. Because as I've told you, during the merge operation, we only copy the unique properties from the source to the destination. So now object.proto, since we are using json.parse to parse the payload, so now object.proto will act as a normal keyword for our source object. But when we try to see object.proto exist on the destination object or not, then it will exist. Cause for destination object, it is basically a what I say, for the destination object, it is basically pointing to object.prototype. So since object.prototype exists, so it will not copy this part. Now iteration will enter inside the nested object part. So now we will access the nested object in something like this way: object dot proto dot polluted. So now this is how we will access using dot notation. Uh, uh, Dot notation, yeah. So now if you try to see if the destination object contains object dot proto dot polluted, so we see that no, it doesn't contain, because it's a what is it, it's a empty object. So now what we can do here, now what will happen here, since proto is working as a simple keyword for a source object, but it's working as magical property for destination object. So now if we will try to reach it via object.proto.polluted, then it will again point to object.prototype, and we will basically setting a arbitrary value or property polluted to object.prototype. So since we have set an arbitrary value polluted to the object.prototype, so again it will be inherited by all the other objects out there, and uh, so that's how basically prototype pollution will work here. So we basically needed to use json.parse to deserialize the user input, so that we can make the proto keyword to work as a simple keyword and not as magical keyword, right? So guys, this was about these. So this is the very specific case which can help us in performing exploiting prototype pollution using JSON deserialization. Now I will just tell you, like, I am just covering one case of deserialization, but there are other serialization formats like XML, YAML. So while I would just suggest you guys or encourage you guys to just try your hands on to find all these, try to see if you can find any vulnerable function in other serialization formats.
Sir, there is a
Now,
request to all the learners. So can I just
mhm.
interrupt you for once?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there
sure,
is
sure,
a
sure.
request
No
to
worries.
all the learners. They have to listen to the entire session very carefully as we have a giveaway afterwards, after this meeting ends. So we'll be pasting the link of a Google form on the chat box once this meeting ends, and we'll be having some questions related to the entire session we have had. So each and every participant who are willing to take part in the giveaway session, we are giving away one mask and a pair of stickers customized by Mr. Grep, and it is basically from our BSides Noida. So once people they submit the form for that, they'll be eligible for the giveaway. So please keep watching the entire session. So you can please continue.
Yeah, sure. So, guys, finally, I would like to tell you about some patterns which you should look for, which I have seen with my experience while hunting for prototype pollution in open source. So, basically, you should be looking for, or you should be trying to find all the operations or all the functions where they are doing recursive cloning of objects, right? So whenever you try to look for prototype pollution within a JavaScript based application, so you should try to look for where recursive cloning can be happening. Like I can give an example, like uh, so these example which I've taken here. Yeah, so this example is basically taken from a JavaScript based ORM. So basically, whenever it comes to JavaScript based ORMs, so there are 100% chance that there might be some function which might be doing recursive copying of objects. You just need to check if there are any protections against that or not, like if there are any mitigation for prototype pollution or not. If there is not any mitigation, then you can exploit it. So the idea was to identify, try to be more mindful, like it's called like smart fuzzing. So try to be more mindful where you should look for, and then try to read the documentations if you are attempting a target. Like if there are any APIs which is performing recursive cloning objects, so you can directly jump to that code section and try to see the how it's working, and if it can be exploited or not, exploited or not. You can also, I will also tell you one more scenario where you can try to find prototype pollution. So if you see wherever anywhere, like if any block of code which is doing insecure deserialization of data, suppose there are multiple packages which do serialization or deserialization of multiple formats like JSON, XML, YAML, even binary formats. So you just need to see, like you just need to take a look at the source code and try to find what are all the vulnerable functions which are doing which are basically recursively copying properties from one object to another. So at the core, this was about identifying the patterns. Now, guys, let's quickly discuss what mitigation which you might face in the wild while looking for prototype pollution. So, mostly nowadays, the most common mitigation which I've seen is using basically they implemented a if else condition to look for the proto keyword while traversing. So while doing the recursive operation of merging objects, they look for proto keyword. So if any of the property or any of the key in the object or in the source object contains the keyword proto, so if any of the object or property contains the word key proto, then they just terminate the operation. So the user in like they so the user again need to start like the operation or not. So the second option was the most common which I've seen nowadays, but there are others also. Uh, but the other options is not applicable always. You should need to worry. You should need to look for, like suppose the first option, you can use object.freeze to freeze the prototype. So by freezing the prototype, you will not allow object.prototype or any other object to modify. So even if somehow an attacker can manage to pollute object.prototype, then your object will not inherit any method from object.prototype because now it is freezed, right? So you can just see the last example where I'm using where there's a thing about object dot create null. So you have seen I was creating just object uh, like like I was just creating object using curly braces. But you can also create object something like object dot create, and in the parenthesis you can put null. So this null basically signifies that we don't want prototype object within our object, right? So basically whenever you define an object, there will be a prototype property or object which will be defined by default within your object. But if you don't want it to be there, then you can explicitly mention it using object dot create null. But again, you might be needing some methods or those methods like toString method or other method which it supports. So again, you should be mindful before putting these protections or mitigations, that you might be needing that thing. So these was guys all about mitigation part. And with this mitigation part, I would like to conclude my session. And so now, if you guys have any question, then you can feel free to ask and put it on the chat. Hello. Hey.
Yes, Sourav, sir, you are audible. If we get any
Uh,
questions on the YouTube, we'll
oh, sure,
we'll
sure,
put it
sure,
up on the chat box.
sure, sure.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, this was actually the end of my session. Like, I would like to conclude my session with.
Welcome, Kavisha. You are the third speaker for today.
Okay.
And very warm welcome to the BSides Noida 2021 Virtual Edition Conference. This is the day one, and you being the third speaker, we have already had a giveaway for two speakers where we were proud to give three pair of stickers in the first one and a pair of stickers and a mask in the second one. So this is kind of a giveaway session where uh, from your the session we
Mhm.
take away questions, we put it in the chat box and seek for the reviews, seek for the answers via people, and then they answer it. So whoever are the first three winners, we give away them these goodie bags from the Besides Noida itself. So in your session, we are having three pair of stickers. So please stay tuned for that. Now again, inviting you. Now again, we are. Let me just introduce you to the entire team members as well as the viewers. We have our third speaker. Her name is Kavita Sheth. She's a security analyst. And the topic today on which she is going to speak is: have you configured AWS securely? AWS from attacker's eye view. So I welcome you again, Kavita, and you can now start your session.
Sure, definitely.
Over to you.
Hey, so today topic is, have you configured AWS securely? AWS from the attacker's eye view. So now you have the clear understanding that what we are gonna discuss, that we're gonna discuss the configuration part from the attacker's perspective, right? What the attacker wants to do and how he or she the leverage of the particular user, right? So before we get started, this little bit around me. I'm security analyst at AppSeco. I just love to break the web application API and the cloud security. I'm also member of different communities like Null, InfoSec, and the Breaking Barrier, Lean Circle. And I'm active speaker at different conference. So yeah, that's just little bit around me. So today agenda, we're gonna discuss reconnaissance technique because this is the most important step to find the misconfiguration issue. So I'll give you a brief overview. How do you find those credentials, EC2 instance, why its reconnaissance is important. Then we're gonna discuss different scenario like how attacker has acquired admin level access from being highly limited IAM user. Then we gonna also discuss how misconfiguration is leading to EC2 instance to attacker to get access to credit card details of users, right? So that is a EC2 instance that is misconfigured, but attacker leverage his or her permission and getting the credit card details of the users. And then how HTML injection vulnerability allows to the steal instance metadata, right? This will be quite interesting for you guys. And how attacker has acquired full admin privilege access using Lambda misconfiguration. So I have covered like how the attacker see and how he used this misconfiguration to leverage his or her permission, right? So what are the attack vector you should look for, right? You must be just aware about this credential that most common, almost people talk about. Hey, we found this credential and we get the S3 bucket access. This is only one vector. There are multiple, or I can see numerous attack vectors you should look for. So second is instance misconfiguration. So for example, here you have the EBS snapshot is publicly accessible, or the EC2 instance is publicly accessible. Like the EC2 instance is ideally, EC2 instance should only allow to the users within a VPC, right? But if this publicly available, then it's issue. How? Don't worry, we're gonna discuss in upcoming slides. So stay tuned. Then S3 misconfiguration, most of people are aware about, like bucket was publicly accessible or bucket was allowed to access by any AWS authenticated user, right? So this is the standard one. Like most known, but most vulnerable also. Most of people forgot to just do proper S3 misconfiguration, and also if this is also placed at it's vulnerable to this, right? But still you can prevent if you have involved the default encryption, or you have used KMS, right? So many organizations miss those part, and being they are not able to like prevent their data being compromised, right? So one of this. Then access control misconfiguration. So there are resources, but the policy has not properly configured, and that leads to the unauthenticated, or like another organization users are accessing the data of organization B, right? So this is related to access control misconfiguration. Then exposure of the resources via firewall. Then what do I mean by that? That if the firewall is not properly configured, right, then like EC2 instance or the RBS data, right, those are publicly available, and that leads to a very huge compromise. Like if I got your RDS data, right, then it's really trouble for you guys. Even the EBS, right? So even the if you think about the network perspective, right, the port number 22 accessible to any random user, right? So basically I can just do SSH and do whatever I want to do, right? So this is due to the misconfigured firewall, right? So one of the standard attack vector you should look for. Then network security misconfiguration. So here organization forgot to like properly define that, hey, the traffic should come from this particular IP address or this particular range, right? So here they lacking of the defining inbound and outbound rule. What you mean by inbound rule? So if the traffic is coming from the outside, right, so that is the inbound rule. And outbound rule is what is traffic, like from the inside your traffic is going outside, right? So that you should clearly define, and you should explicitly mention that, hey, this port number and from this particular IP is allowed, right? So one of the standard, how this is the issue, we're gonna discuss soon, right, in the upcoming. Then insecure custom application, like some of people just forgot to think about this. I have included that also. Okay, how can the insecure custom application can leads to this? Like for example, I'm just giving you quick overview, right? So if your application is vulnerable to SSRF or LFI, right, and that is hosted on EC2 instance, then and the role is also attached to that EC2 instance, right, then it's definitely huge issue for the organization. How that we're gonna discuss, but I'm just giving a quick overview. If the vulnerable to SSRI, I can get the IAM credential or the instance metadata, right? So these are the standard attack vector. That is what to look for, not only the leaked credentials. Now we're gonna discuss about reconnaissance before answering those 3-4 questions. How the attacker sees. So first most common step for the attacker perspective, reconnaissance part, right? So first finding credentials. So lots of people talk about, hey, you can we found the credential and we got access to S3 bucket, or we got the admin level access, right? But how they are finding? So here I just concluded that different techniques, there can be a multiple, but these are the most common that you can look for, right? What to look for? Then look first is hard-coded credentials stored in JavaScript file or the client side, right? You can just search for it. Then AWS Cognito credential in response, right? So you must be thinking, how do I find in the response? Don't worry, I have attached the screenshot for in the upcoming slide. I'm gonna mention how do you find that, but you can find in the response as well, right? Then again, vulnerabilities in AWS hosted application like SSRF and the LFI, right? So what I have discussed earlier. So if web application vulnerable to SSRF, try to get the instance metadata and try to get the credential out of it, right? Then you can most common code repositories such as Bitbucket and GitHub. That AWS error message such as access denied. So we have observed that some people say, hey, this is not allowed to access, right? But in the response, they are saying that this is your AWS credential. So indirectly, we are getting the AWS credential, right? Then public snapshot, right? So here you can just search for it, that description, like description and the secrets, right? So you might ending up getting the secrets or the credential or any sensitive information out of public ABS snapshot, because some people or the organization just make their ABS snapshot to publicly accessible, right? So here you can also find it. AMI, publicly AMI. So that is the ideal practice, that you should not make your AMIs to publicly accessible, but if the available, right? So you should always look for public images and try to get what sensitive information you find, right? Then S3 bucket, you might be thinking, hey, how do I find S3 bucket? So I have seen, okay, some organizations store their admin credential in their S3 bucket. So it's most strangers, not only their like credit card details or anything, right? They store their AWS credential or admin level credential as well in the S3 bucket without even encrypted, right? So it's what to look for. If you find the publicly S3 bucket, don't just go for it and file it. Hey, we found that S3 bucket is publicly accessible and we are able to get the data. Try to get this kind of things like credential or credit card details, right? So these are the what to look for. And then RBA snapshot, you don't worry how you gonna search for it, what tools might help to find those RDS or the EBS snapshot, right? So don't worry about that. I'm gonna discuss about that. People looking for one most common and most ignorable thing, people looking for help online and ending up copy pasting that complete information. Like for example, if I'm a user, I'm saying, hey, I'm not able to access this particular instance. Can you just provide me support around this? But they are ending up copy pasting their whole credentials in that like looking while looking for the help, right? So this again issue. So this is the screenshot I have attached, that here if you see, right, the credential being get disclosed in the response itself. So it's this is how you find, right? So when you intercepting the request, please look for the response and see if you are getting the credential, if you are getting, see what kind of access you have, right? Then for the EC2 misconfiguration, so you might be thinking, hey, you talk about EC2 instance, how do we find the EC2 instance, right? So here I have covered some of the tools or the techniques that you can use. So senses you can use for finding EC2 instance, for example, Compute One, Amazon AWS.com. So here I will get the list of EC2 instance that is publicly accessible and what are the ports. But make sure that you don't just browse it and access thoroughly. Make sure that you have the permission. If it accessible, just file it, okay? Don't try to get the more information out of it, right? Then yeah, this is census, and you can use Google Doc as well. Google Doc is quite and the most popular tool, and that's what to try for. You can simply say site star Amazon AWS.com W compute. So it will have the list of EC2 instance, and sometimes you might ending up finding S3 as well, right? Another is most popular Shodan. That is what to look for. There is no wrong with it, nothing wrong with it, because Shodan and census will help you with the two things. One is finding EC2 instance, and also you are able to see the SSL certificate and what are the ports open, right? So by that you can also get idea that if the firewall is not properly configured, right, then you can just try to get the access to that particular port number, right? Like if the inbound or outbound rule is not properly there, then you are able to access. Then it's again issue, right? Because from being outsider, you are getting access to one particular organization, AWS EC2 instance. right? So this is how dangerous it could be. So yeah, I have attached the rules. So here this misconfigure look like why, why is misconfigured, right? So here I'm saying source 00, like what you mean by 0.0? It's like any user from the internet that allowed to use port number 4433306, that is MySQL 3389, that RDP. Oh, dangerous. MySQL dangerous. 9200, that is Elasticsearch. Now this all should not be allowed this publicly accessible, right? This should be, you say this is the my IP range, like your organization IP range, that should be in the place. But if not, then you can just have the access to. Here I have attached Redis instance that they have not properly configured the firewall rules, and I was able to get the Redis data, right? So this is one screenshot I have attached. Now to finding the RDS endpoint, right? You can definitely use the Google Doc. You just simply say site, like particular any site you can mention which you are targeting, and say RDS Amazon AWS.com, and say pass or password. So you might ending up getting credential, DB information, right? So this is how you should look for the RDS endpoint. Now, most common question, how do I find the S3 bucket, right? Now to look for the S3 bucket means configuration, but how do I find, right? So first is most common Google search. Second is Google Doc, right? This like how I was finding RDS or the EC2 instance, same way you can find the S3 bucket as well. Shodan you can use, Census you can use OSN tool, sublister, and AMAS. Like how you can just pass your predefined name list to this, and you might ending up getting the S3 bucket, because there is a standard way, right? That organization.s3, Amazon AWS. So it's either 3-4 ways to find the S3 bucket, right? It's only 3-4 ways to name the particular S3 bucket, right? So it's easy to brute force as well. So you can use the brute force technique as well. In the DNS record, you might get also then other tools like certificate transparency you can use, right? Then there are numerous bucket finder scripts like bucket finder, bucket inspector, lazy S3. There are so many scripts available. You can just use that, and you might ending up finding the S3 bucket. And most favorite of the security professional is Grey Hat War for bucket search, right? So you can also use that, but it's a paid. So, but you can use all this method, right? So yeah. So I have attached one of the screenshot that how I find the S3 bucket using Google Docs. So you can use same technique. You just in URL instead of assessment, you can use the credit card or the password. You know, right? How do, but it's like how this is a standard query you should look for, like star s3 Amazon AWS.com. In URL, you can either use assessment, password, anything you are looking for. Now reconnaissance is done, and you have found the credential as well. But you might be thinking, hey, what can I do next, right? Because almost people ending up, hey, we found the credential, and we might ending up filing the issue. This credential is being leaked in the GitHub. Don't do that. Try to see what kind of access this particular user has, and see how can you escalate your privilege or that particular victim user, right? So I have also covered like in the previous, right? I have mentioned that I have covered different types of question and how I'm being limited user to the high privilege user. So standard approach, I have keep in mind like made the simple flow that can be a long flow chart, can be as well. But if you think, right, in general they are all I can say, you got the credential, right, as an attacker. Now you should try to enumerate the permission. Hey, what kind of permission I have? Am I limited user? If I'm having admin level access, if I'm having EC2 level access, if I'm having only S3 bucket. So this all should look it all what to look for. And after that, see if you can like do the privilege escalation, right? If not, then see if you are getting sensitive information, for example, that one particular having access to, just list out the S3 bucket, and there is no way you can escalate the privilege of that particular user. But in the S3 bucket itself, you are ending up getting the credit card details, transaction details, right? So then it's again high level issue, right? So it's what to look for. So, but please start with the enumerating permission. Just don't say, hey, I found the credential and you are reported. Just follow this standard technique. And for the privilege escalation, don't worry, I have covered some scenarios, so you will have fair understanding that how can you do the privilege escalation from being highly limited user to being admin, right? So it's I have covered few scenarios, so that might help you. The first is how attacker has acquired the admin level access from being highly limited IM user, right? So first I got the victim credential, so I'll try to configure the profile. Then I just try to enumerate permission. So if you notice, right, I have the permission of IM related and to get or the list the data. There is nothing else I have if you think about, and one is STS. So it's, as an attacker, I was like, there is so limited permission. What else I can do? But there is a STS, right? So as an attacker, I got idea. Hey, I can have the permission to do the STS, right? So what I'll basically do, I just say STS and get the credential and just try to see what kind of policy attached to that particular user, right? So I have a credential. I try to list the attached policy of that particular user, right? So how do I get the username using STS functionality, right? So it's simple. So AWS IAM list attached user policy, and I'm saying, hey, username is this. Can I get the policy? So I got the policy number, and after that, I'm getting the current policy version. I want to see what kind of version it has and what is the policy name. So I say, hey, AWS IAM get policy, and this is policy number. V1 is a default policy, and this is the number. I was like, okay, let me see what else, like what are the different types of policy available. So here we have the 5 policy, and it's what to look for when you have the 5 policy. It's because you know there is this particular user only have the list and the IAM related permission. What else you can do? So you should what to look for the all policy, right? So after getting the list of policies, just try to enumerate the permission of the and try to get all the information about different policy. So earlier was this IAM get list and the default policy version, right? That is only get list. There is nothing interesting. But here you see, right, for the V5, I got that, okay, that is policy V5 and that is maybe outdated, but it has the admin level. Why it's the admin level action that I'm talking about? Because if you notice, right, action is star, effect is allow, resource means also star. That means like particular actor or the attacker can do any action on any resource. So it's a kind of admin level access. So as an attacker, oh, that's awesome. Now, how do I make this policy as a V5? Let me try if I have permission, right? So I try to make V5 as a default policy and there is no error and that success. So this is basically privilege escalation. How? Like, for example, you are being having the get and list permission or the limited permission. Now you made the V5 as default policy and the V5 was having the admin level credential. So it privilege escalation, and after that, what kind of permission the user was having? C, guard duty, lambda access, EC2 instance level access, everything it has. So we confirm that, hey, this is how the privilege escalation happen, standard. Like we enumerate the policy and we made the over permissive policy to default policy. So this is like more standard. So this is what I'm saying. It's always what to look for the permission and try to get sensitive information or try to perform privilege escalation, so that you can say that it's a high severity issue, and this is how it works, right? So what was my approach so far? I got the hard coded credential. I tried to enumerate permission. I got that, hey, this is having the IAM related permission or the get list permission. Then I tried to enumerate the policy. In the one of policy was having admin level access, and I just made this policy as a default policy. So this is the approach to do the privilege escalation. Okay. Now you must be thinking, hey, you say we what to look for the public IP of EC2 instance, but I found that what should be my next approach, right? So you should look for, is there any port open, right? Is web application running on that IP? Like you found the IP, right? But is there any web application running on that EC2 instance IP? Is EC2 instance accessible to public user, right? Is default configuration being used, right? So all these things you should what to look for. Now I'm going to discuss like why, and I'm going to also answer how misconfigured EC2 instance is allowing attacker to get access to a credit card details of the users, right? So you must be thinking, hey, this is EC2 misconfigure, what else we can do? Don't worry, I'm going to answer everything. I have covered one scenario as well. So we found that, hey, this is one public IP of EC2 instance, and we found that, hey, web application being hosted on EC2 instance, right? So here you see that it's accessible on the port 80, and it's saying that, hey, URL must be string. So we thought that, hey, URL parameter being used. So it's what to look for, right? As a attacker or the penetrator, tester, right? So it's what to look for. So we said URL and we pass ifconfig and we found the IP address. And so we just say, hey, this is vulnerable to SSRF. If you are just newbie, then you might be thinking, hey, we found your publicly accessible EC2 instance and it's vulnerable to SSRF. Just don't do, you can file it, but just don't limit yourself by doing this. You should always try to get the metadata. Like, how do you find it, right? So your ideal approach should be, web application is hosted on EC2 instance. Yes. It's a web application vulnerable to SSRF. Yes. It's a role attached to that EC2 instance. Yes. Then try to get the IAM role credential, right? We did the same. We say 169.254, 169.254 standard address for the instance metadata, right? So we are saying that metadata IAM security credential. I got the role and the credential as well. So after getting the credential, you try to enumerate permission, like how I show you, right, guys? How do you enumerate the permission? So same way you enumerate the permission, and in this case we found that S3 related permission. So basically you say WSLS profile SSRF stolen credential, like what you have found the credential as. So you configure the profile and you just try to get the S3 related data. So there is so many interesting things, right? There is a card holder data, that is secret being available. So you can, here you got the credit card details of the user in this card holder data. But there is another for the surprise package for you guys, that here we found the admin credential as well, right? So if you see, right, I'm using sync command to just copying this credential in my local account, and it was success, right? So here admin user.txt. I have also downloaded the credit card information, right? But instead of only the credit card, there is also what to get the admin credential, right? So this is what I have also discussed while in the reconnaissance we were discussing, right? That you might ending up finding admin credential in S3 bucket. So here we are finding, right? So this is all about like how the EC2 instance, how from being public IP to downloading sensitive information. So how do we, like, let me just summarize, how do we find all these things, and what was the, like, what was the lacking behind, right? Found credential with permission around EC2 related operation, right? Application is hosted on EC2 instance was vulnerable to SSRF. Role was attached to that EC2 instance. For example, that is vulnerable to SSRF, but if there is no role attached, then how do we find the credential, right? So this is always to look for that. The question I have asked, right, or the flowchart I have made, how to look for, that is what to look, that exploit to steal IAM role credential. Now you find the credential, now see how can you exploit it, right? Then try to enumerate the permission and found S3 related permission and list S3 bucket and download data. This is all we have done, and I have covered why we have done and what the reason behind it, right? Now this is a little bit around attack surface analysis for this particular default configuration setting usage, right? Because this public accessible IP the web application hosted on EC2 was vulnerable to SSRF. No proper input validation was there. That's why it's vulnerable to SSRF. Role was having to work, like role was having access to work with the S3 bucket. Data storage in S3 was not encrypted. For example, that's why I told about, right, if it's not encrypted, then it's again misconfiguration issue. Why? Because if it's encrypted, even though we are able to access, but you are not getting what is being stored because it's encrypted and you are not having access to that master key, right? So that's why sensitive information being stored in the S3 bucket, like credit card details and more specifically admin credential. Now you say it's similar to sounds like Capital One breach. How? Because there was a misconfigured firewall and attacker got access to a EC2 instance, and he, after getting the access to EC2 instance, he also got the IAM role access to the S3 access, right? So that particular role having access to S3, and using that role, he or she able to download S3 bucket data that is was having the credit card details, right? So this is all about Capital One breach. Now another question: how attacker has used HTML injection vulnerability to steal instance metadata? It sounds like for you guys like in HTML injection, hey, this is not that huge impact vulnerability, right? It's a HTML injection, but it's what to look for if it's hosted on EC2 instance and using AWS, right? Like obviously using AWS if the EC2 instance. So what was the approach? If the application was vulnerable to HTML injection, then try to see if it's also vulnerable to SSRF, right? So basically you are saying H1B, H1. So you found it's getting bold. You found that, hey, it's vulnerable to HTML injection. But what if I'm saying image source and the Bob collaborator link and completing, right? Complete the tag. If I'm getting the hit in my Bob collaborators, then I'm saying, hey, sounds like vulnerable to the SSRF. Now what's next? So it's hosted on EC2 instance, right? Then it's what to try further, and the role being attached, then what to try to get the credential out of it, right? Or the metadata. How? That we already discussed, right? So that what to look for, and you get the EC2 metadata. So from HTML injection to the getting EC2 metadata, how? Like you found the HTML injection, then you found the SSRF application hosted on EC2 instance, and then you got the EC2 metadata, right? So this is whole thing. Now, how attacker has acquired full admin privilege using Lambda misconfiguration. Okay, so Lambda is serverless, right? If you are using Lambda function, and that is or the any Lambda level access, right? And you have not properly configured or defined the role particularly, right? You might ending up giving a least privileged user to the admin level access, right? So how? Don't worry, we're gonna discuss how it can be possible. So you got the credential. First thing you do, you list the user. Hey, what are the users available, right? So I found 4-5 users. You might ending up finding thousands of users based on how big organization. Then you say, hey, I got the user. Now, what are the policy attached to user, right? Because it's most important. So by knowing the policy, you get the more information, like how we did last time, right? So I try to get the policy out of it. After policy, I'm saying, hey, this is my policy version. Okay, and this is my policy number. Here I'm finding that, hey, this particular user having the Lambda level pass role access, and this having name as a Lambda manager. Okay, I say, okay, that's good. There is another policy I found, and that is having debug role. That has two role I found, debug and the manager. Uh, right, Lambda manager, and Lambda manager was having this kind of access, and debug role was having administrator level access, right? But default was the Lambda manager, right? That we have seen. And now as an attacker, you want like, okay, what can I do with the Lambda manager, right? Let me try to make this Lambda manager role to the admin, right? Most fundamental, try to perform privilege escalation, right? So for that, you say AWS SGS assume role, and here you are providing the ARN value of the Lambda manager, and you got the temporary credentials of that user, right? Now what you will say that, hey, can I attach the administrative policy to that particular IAM user, right? So you use Boto script, or right? So here basically what I'm saying that attach policy user will be the cries like a Lambda manager, and the policy ARN will be, I'm mentioning the policy of the debug role that is having the admin level access, right? So here I'm mentioning. So indirectly I'm saying that, can we just please apply admin level policy to the Lambda manager, right? After that, we use the Lambda function, and to like to perform the leverage, right? The Lambda manager to perform the privilege escalation using Lambda function. You first create the Lambda function and you invoke it. Fair? Right? So here I am saying AWS Lambda create function. I am saying this is the function and the script you can use. And here we say role is a debug role. Debug, why? Because it's admin level access. And after that, we just try to invoke that particular function, and profile we are using is Lambda manager, right? So basically we are trying to perform privilege escalation using Lambda function. And to be amazed, we got the full admin level access. So here now we have made the Lambda manager user role, that is Chris, to the admin level access, right? He is no more to the having access to only as a Lambda level access, right? Now he can do whatever he or she want to do. So this is how you should look for that. Don't limit yourself being, hey, we found the credential, and or this is user having just limited permission, we can do nothing. So this all you should look for. Try to do the privilege escalation. If not privilege escalation, then try to get the sensitive information out of it. Now you must be thinking, hey, what tools I can use? a scout suit you can use. This is, you can do the attack surface analysis. How? Because this scout suit is a like AWS multi cloud tool for the CI's auditing. So it will list out, hey, how the EC2 is misconfigured or S3 misconfigured, right? Then you can use Prowler, then use S3 inspector. It just automatically say that what are the misconfiguration happen for the S3. Then you can use enumerate IAM to see what are the permission that particular use Paco for the penetration testing purpose. If
We have a question for you, Kavisha, from the chat box.
okay,
Shall I read it for you?
yeah, sure, definitely.
Yes. So it says if we create too many roles for each, how we will manage them.
Like what, can you just mention again?
If we create too many roles for each, how will we manage them?
I'm assuming that too many roles for one particular user, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So what you should always look for the uh, you should start, if I'm assuming that this particular user is within organization, right? It's a multi organization, like different you want to allow cross account, then it's a different policy, right? But in general you should follow the IAM policy, which clearly mention that in the AWS guide, right? Like what is the standard approach you should follow, and try to use the cloud trail, that you have the logging in place, right? That what is being request made at what time, from which IP address is being made, right? And then you can also send this login information to CloudWatch if been this particular users access been escalate, right? That one we discussed, so that Lambda manager role now having the admin level access, right? So that you will have information in that CloudTrail, and you will be notified, right? Another use case you can use security hub, that is also used to notify you. And another that is access control tower, that is service being provided by AWS, right? That manage different roles for you, or that logging information being done in this particular account, right? So this is how you manage, or in general you can create a different account, that hey, this only being, this operation on logging information always being done by this particular user, right? For example, if you are saying that this is the account A, and there are different user A, B, C, and ABC users, A is having the admin level access, B having the only to list the data, and C having the for example logging information. But what if your account being compromised? Then it's a trouble, right, for you. So try to create the another account for the logging. So same way you can just define different privilege and use this logging and monitoring services as well. Hello, am I making sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for answering the question, Kavisha. I have another one for you from the chat box itself.
Okay.
So, from the live chat going on YouTube. So,
Hmm.
it says, let me read it for you. How can I increase the severity of my
Hmm.
SSRF where the server is on AWS? Is there any internal AWS by default creds or something which I can use?
So it's a definitely which I have covered, right? If the application is vulnerable to SSRF, right, then try to get the instance metadata if the role being attached to that web application, right? So for you find that hey, this is vulnerable to SSRF, then try to get the instant metadata by simply saying 169.254, 169.254 IAM metadata security credential. First, try to get the role, and that try to get the credential out of it. So this is how you make the severity most. Now, again, if you don't want to just limit yourself by getting the credential, what you can do, you now have the credential, right? The temporary credential you got. Now what you can do, which I have already discussed, that you configure the profile and see what kind of privilege you have. if you are like fully blessed, you might ending up getting the admin level access as well. But if not, then see if is there any technique you can apply to perform privilege escalation, right? Like I have covered 2 3, so it's what to look for. This is like ideal approach. I have also mentioned the what was the flow for this particular attack.
If it is possible, we can take more questions from the chat box. We have enough time for that.
Yeah.
All questions have been cleared, Kavisha. Thank you very much for being here, giving your precious time and to the people and to us. We
That's
all from the BSides Noida team, we all are thankful for you being here. The next speaker for today is Philippe Humeau. A brief background for him: he's a CEO at Crowd SEC. The topic on which he is going to speak today is leveraging the crowd power to regain faith in Internet's zero trust architecture. So we welcome you, Philippe, for being here. You may start
Hey,
your presentation.
yeah, thank you. I'm delighted to present at BSides Noida. I'm Philippe Humeau, and I'm actually the CEO of CrowdSec. And I've been in the past pen tester for years and years, meaning it's a job where you are a contractor and you have to break into networks and find vulnerabilities and tell a customer, oh, you should definitely fix this because it's dangerous, right? So after doing this for years, I've decided to switch to another line of work and created a company that was more into defense side, right? So we were doing high security environments, high security hosting, and the stuff worked. But the thing is, it was complicated. It was a stack of many different products. And in the end, it was, you could not carry it easily. You could not install it for a customer in, say, less than maybe 2 months. So we looked into this with our CTO, and we're like, okay, how can we do it differently so that at least people can use it, without pain, and it could be very straightforward to leverage the security level. And we came out with an idea that would be, let's share the signal of the bad guys, right? What if we could identify the bad guys and share the signals between us, between all the SecOps community members, all the good intended people? And this is what happened. So today we are something like 14,000 users sharing this across the globe and growing by the day by roughly 1% per day. We will be a lot of users very soon, and the more we are, the stronger the systems become. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation. First of all, I think we've made a mistake for all the last years. I mean, if you look at those companies, those logos, you know all of them nearly, right? They have close to unlimited budgets, like literally. If you take JP Morgan, they have a budget per year of something close to $800 million in cybersecurity. $800 million. I mean, to the figure, it's enormous. I mean, even governments don't have that in a budget most of the time. So, and they've been hacked, nevertheless. They've been hacked. Whatever the amount of money they have been spending in this, they got hacked, which means it's probably the wrong approach. It's not about like outsmarting the hackers, because if outsmarting them would work, throwing so much money would have worked, and it did not. So it's about outnumbering them. We think the problem is not about outsmarting them, it's about outnumbering them. And why is this that so much money didn't solve the problem? Because it's crazy, right? I mean, when you invest so much, you would expect results. Well, they fight against impossible odds. The first one is time. Time is an asymmetrical force playing for the attacker, for the offender, because time is always playing on his side. You never get to choose when you're attacked. You never get to choose when you get a 0-day or a new vulnerability or something like that. You never get to choose when the patch is available, which is even crazier. And actually, you barely get to choose when you can deploy it. So time never plays for yourself, right? It's always playing for the attacker. The second thing is the perimeter. Perimeter is a considerable problem nowadays, because people, they are struggling already to deal with the current perimeter they had, but now they have shadow IT, things that are in the cloud, things that are on SaaS services, in containers, in whatever else file, wherever they can be. It's everywhere and nowhere. It's scattered across. So you cannot really set a limit and say, okay, this is my perimeter, and everyone else just go out. No, that doesn't work like this. And that's a real problem too. And now with this COVID crisis, we had to create VPNs a lot everywhere around the globe so that people can work on distance. Okay, fine, but pretty much all companies were not ready for that at all. They were just, They had to do it, but it was emergency time. And you know, it never is really going well in this case. Usually when you do things in emergency, nah, it's not good. So what happens is it's full of bridges. I'm not saying everything is bad. I'm saying at best the perimeter is uneven. And the last thing would be money. I mean, when you invest $800 million in your security and the hacker that breached you barely invested, I don't know, maybe $80,000, probably closer to $8,000, how would you compete? It's impossible. It's just not the same, factor. It's not the same amount you're talking about. So it's impossible to play in a casino where the bank would have 100,000 chances versus one to win against you. You would not play in this casino, right? I would not either. So that's why hackers are always winning. First of all, we are trying to outsmart them, which is a mistake. And second, there are these three strong factors that are playing against the defenses. Right. So we think at CrowdSec that this castle strategy, it belongs to the 80s. It's over. I mean, you cannot say I have a firewall, I'm secure. It doesn't hold anymore. There's no firewall bastion thing anymore. It's just over. The things are all across the place. And if you don't want that, you will have to go back into medieval old times, with the pager and the fax and stuff like that. And we don't want that, right? Modern businesses, they have to open themselves. And this is the problem. This is the gate to hell. So we want to solve this problem. This is our goal at CrowdSec. So how do we do it? We think you should defend the thing wherever they are in their context and not try to outsmart anything or anyone. That would be a big mistake. The second thing is the only way of doing this is leveraging the crowd. And for God's sake, I'm speaking to Indians here. You guys are 1.2 billion, something like that, right? So it's the utmost importance that we join forces together. Because if you think about it, the hackers are probably what, 10,000, 100,000 at the scale of the internet? We are millions on the other side. We want to defend ourselves, right? Millions. So why on earth would we leave them the win? Which we can definitely defend against them. We are so numerous. So, and the crowd has not been leveraged in cybersecurity. I mean, I'm talking here like meaningfully. Because if you look at it, what? There are bug bounty programs. Yeah, what happens? They are like 10,000. No, there are 100 or 1,000 people. This is not enough. This is not what I'm talking about. And if you look at, driving, Waze is a good example. Waze, they leverage something like millions and billions of users. That's why it's efficient in the first place. So what I'm saying here is we should definitely team together. This is the main thing. Friends, it worked too before. Like Facebook was very efficient. It leveraged millions and billions of people working. There is LinkedIn, crowdfunding, it. And what about security, right? This is where we stand. We are building the ways of cybersecurity. What we want to do, our goal, is to have the same magnitude, the same amount, or maybe not billions, but already millions of people collaborating together. And what we do is we take local information from the logs, from not every kind of log, any kind of logs really, and we scan them locally at your place. We don't export anything. It's really on your site still. And within those logs, we are looking for bad behaviors. People that are doing, I don't know, credit card stuffing, port mapping, port scanning, HTTP scan, stuff like that. And that are trying to compromise you or your clients. This is what we're looking for. And with those scenarios, we often enough, we just can, we identify those and we block them. That's already really cool. But there is better things to do even. This is where it's becoming really neat. Now that we have found someone, maybe locally doing crap, we can share his IP globally to the network. And that becomes a lot more efficient because everyone reporting is generating a signal, a trace that helps us all to defend ourselves. So how does it work? Well, this is a massively multiplayer firewall. If you want to, or an EDR or an IPS, IDS, you call it whatever you want. Basically what it does, it's scanning logs, right? And within those logs, it's finding bad behavior. So it could be any kind of logs. It could be logs coming from AWS, could be logs coming from SIEM, ELK, Kafka, whatever you name it, syslog, journal D. And within those logs, we're analyzing whatever happens. And sometimes there are bad behavior, people scanning your website, credential stuffing, credit card stuffing, port scanning, things like this, okay? And to find those, you can simply, go onto the hub. There are a lot of scenarios that are already pre-made for you. I will switch quickly to this one. So in this collection, for example, you can see scenarios for Apache, for HTTP, for cPanel, Dovecoat, HA proxy, IP table, so you name it. The scenario already exists, and you can download them really easily. Say you want to work with Nexi, you just cut paste this line of command, and you're done. I mean, it's as simple as that. So once you have found the behavior you want to block, and the engine found something or someone, you can obviously block it, right? It's obvious. But you can send, for example, a CAPTCHA. If you're working on an HTTP layer, why not send a CAPTCHA? Actually, it's better. Actually, it's going to be more efficient, and it gives a better result on average on HTTP layer. You can lower the rights of the person, the credential of the person. You can prevent him or her from going into, I don't know, WP admin or /admin, or accessing some higher credentials or higher privileged credentials. And you can eventually say, send a multi-factor authentication, for example. Say on your mobile, you get a number or a text message or something in like this. If you want, you just send this alert into a SecOps room, in something like what's called Slack channel, for example. Or you just trigger a script. You do whatever you want. You detect at one place and you block at another place. And you can do it in whatever manner you want. And once you did this, you found a bad actor with a bad IP. And you know what? We're interested in this. So this IP, if you're okay with this, you don't have to share. It's optional. But if you share with us, we share with you. It's pretty cool. So if you share this IP with us, what happens is we check that it's a right IP. It's not a poisoning attempt, someone trying to fake a signal, someone trying to make us think that Gmail is a bad actor, that Microsoft Update is a bad actor, or whatever else, And then once we see this signal is pristine and genuine, then we send it to the whole network. Everyone that shares a signal is getting back signals as well, and is getting in real time a lot of IPs that are dangerous for them. That way, they are not taking any risk, and they are getting the benefit of having this strong protection for free, and it's coming from the community. It's kind of a global internet neighborhood watch, if you want, or some kind of digital immune system. Rather, it's even more accurate, I'd say. All right, so once we have that, we are safe from harm's way, or more or less. Now, it's better than what existed before because it's actually faster, like 60 times faster than, for example, fail2ban. It's actually also, it offers an inference engine. It provides observability out of the box. You have a Docker container that will show you a console, and you can see whatever is happening on your network. You can have also observability, replayability. This is modular, it's modern, it's an easy grammar you can get. So it's pretty cool. And then it's IPv6 ready. It's multi-OS, multi-layer, and it has multi-stage detection. You can do something like, if this happens, and that happens, and then that happens, well, then it's a targeted attack, for example. So I have a question here. CrowdSec is dope. Can I even use it on my temporary project servers since I have malicious requests? Yeah, of course. Of course. You can absolutely use it in any context you want. You can use it on a VM. You can use it in a container. You can use it on a bare metal machines. It's absolutely not a problem. It's already shipped for pretty much all the versions of Linux you can think about, for most BSDs. And yeah, it's available for anything. Right. So next is it's free. And that's probably the best part of it. It's free and open source. It's really something that you can leverage anytime you want, anywhere you want. There's no limit to this. And you can embed it in your own code. You can embed it in any hardware you want. It has been reviewed by professionals, so coded by professionals already, but reviewed also and audited by professionals. It's free of charge. It's transparent, and you can contribute to it. Actually, you're very welcome to contribute to it. So now if you look at this tab, this is the CrowdSec repository on Package Cloud. And you have, packages for pretty much anything you can think. Debian, Red Hat, ARM, various kind of architectures. So it's really easy for you to find whatever you need in whatever context you need, right? Sorry, back to the presentation. I'm probably driving the host of the show mad doing this. So, hey, it's time for a demo, right? We all want a demo. So I love the demos myself. Here it goes. So we have a shell here, very simple, basic shell. And it's on the Linux machine that is hosting Nginx website with MySQL. So when you install the product with the Debian package, it will auto-detect everything for you. You don't have to do anything here. You see, it will check for the various log files you have. It sees that there is Apache, HTTPD, Nginx, SSHD, MySQL, Telnet, and SMB, and it will install every services and scenarios you need to be protected all by itself. You don't have to do nothing for that. If you want to reconfigure later on, you have a wizard. It's super easy to do. So now that it's running, let's send some attack on this. Let's use Nikto. Nikto is a very simple web scanner, and as soon as we start it, we see that CrowdSec coded. It sees an HTTP bad user agent, HTTP probing, crawl non-static, HTTP sensitive file inclusion, and so on and so forth. So it knows something is wrong, and it's blocked already. That's great, right? And if you see the decision list, now this IP, it's been banned for 4 hours. That's pretty cool. But if we check our HTTP server, so you can inspect an alert, you can see the detail of an alert, why it has been banned and how and for what reason, the ISP, what it tried to do, And then if you check, you can still access the web server. Why? Because this IP is bad. It should not be able to access the web server. It's because we haven't installed any bouncer. Understand that the thing is, we have on the one end the agent that is detecting, and on the other end we have a bouncer that is remediating the problem. And this is exactly what it is. You have to install a bouncer. So here for an Nginx, because it's an Nginx server, but you have bouncers for pretty much any technology, right? So you install the bouncer, and all of a sudden, any IP that has been either detected by you or sent by the central system to you is blocked right away. So anytime you get someone scanning you, bam, it's over. It's getting a forbidden. Goodbye. That's cool, right? But we have better than that. Look, we remove our IP from this list, right? We want to be able to go on with the demo. So now we'll send something else. We can access back to the website. Everything's fine. We remove the IP. What we see here is that we have the firewall logs, and that it's blocking, it's IP table based, and it tosses the IPs that are blocked into the logs. Fine. We have an IP table scenario. There's a parser for the logs, and there's a scenario written in YAML that will parse all your IP tables output from the firewall. So now that the beast knows new trick, let's do an nmap. Bam! Right away, we are caught and blocked for IP table scan multiport. So we know that someone has been trying. Oh damn! Sorry, I cut the demo. I'm trying to be back to the right place. We know that we were caught for scanning, right? Sorry, here we were. All right. My bad. Sorry, guys. Coming back to it. Up was here. Here. All right. So we had a scan multiport, we blocked it. My bad. So now if we try to access again to the website, so we see first of all that the IP is back in the list. And if we try to curl to access the network, it's banning us. So we cannot do anything. And now the cool thing is we also have a dashboard. When you do this command, it starts basically a container that is instrumented with Metabase. And Metabase will give you a nice, neat view of what's happening on your machine, right? So you can get login password here, right? Yep. And then you can see what happened on your network, right? See the alert, see the scenario that have been triggered, everything. But we haven't made much things so far. We have made a scan, port, and HTTP scan. So we don't have many stuff and SSH brute force. But say we want to replay logs from the past. That's a cool feature as well. Let's take logs that are a year old and let's inject them into our CrowdSec instance. And it will check if there were aggressions already in the past and tell you, I would have done that, I've seen this, and so on and so forth. It's also allowing you to see if your scenarios are not too twitchy and would not block something legitimate. But when we do this, we also inject all those alerts into the logs and into the container. So if we check it for a year ago or 3 years ago or something like this, we'll see every decision that has been taken on those logs, right? So we can see that, actually this machine was aggressed a lot and we didn't know about it, right? And you can see a lot of metrics because we know you love it, right? So you get anything you want, the number of line parse read, where we found something, when the decision was taken, and so on and so forth. And there's a brand new thing I should show you also. We now have an online console, which is in beta for now, but I can show it to you. So what it does is it's showing you in an even better way all your instances. So for example, Caramel here is my instance, it's my machine. That runs 10 scenarios, 3 agents, 2 bounces. And I can check, a few things, but mainly I can check my alerts. And I can see, what has been happening, where, from, what has been attempted, by whom, and how. Isn't it cool? I can see, the target machine, who was sending the attack, the country it came from, the IP it came from, the scenario, SSH brute force, user enumeration, and stuff like that. Ain't it cool? So that's the console. You can see a lot of things here, right? All right. So that's for the demo. Up. Can you get the next slide? Yeah. So what can a behavior engine do for you? Well, pretty much everything nowadays is spitting logs, right? Your machines is spitting log, obviously. Your web server is spitting logs. Your car is spitting logs. Your phone is spitting logs. Your router, your microwave oven, maybe. So many things spit logs. Even planes are spitting logs. But the thing is, we can, anytime there are logs generated, we can more or less find what's behind it, right? Sorry, I was sharing the wrong screen. So we can see what's behind it. So in the logs, we can see applicative DDoS, obviously, level 7 DDoS. CrowdSec has a use case which makes it super easy to defend against level 7 DDoS for free. There is drive-by download, ransomware. There is resource abuse, credential brute forcing, SSH brute force, FTP brute force, Active Directory, whatever. There is PHP Armageddon, so everything that is cross-site scripting, SQL injection that would compromise our web server. Port scanning, obviously, web scans, as we saw. Credential or credit card stuffing, this is called, if you reuse credentials that were used elsewhere, or if you are getting a lot of people, with microtransaction of $0.1 with credit cards, where your average card is something like $30, then it's credit card stuffing. They're trying to validate credit card numbers, and we can easily defend against that. And credential stuffing, how do you know? If you get someone reusing credentials, if you're not in the network, if no one else tells you, okay, this same credential have been used with me, and with me, and with me, and 1,000 people are reporting it, then it's credential stuffing. And it's extremely hard to detect if you're alone, or impossible, actually. Bot scrapping, some aggressive bots, booking all the products, or stopping websites from functioning, or scrapping the images or prices or whatever. Targeted attacks. Targeted attacks are also detectable because, say, if someone is doing a web scan and then a port scan and then brute forcing your credential, it's not just a minor thing. They are retargeting you and they want to get in, right? So what we're up to here is a resource war. Understand me well. I mean, hackers, the only thing they don't want is to be naked in the street, to be found by the FBI at 4 a.m. in the morning. Because if they do it from their own IPs, this is what's going to happen. They will be found by the FBI or whatever local enforcement agency. And so what they do is they are hiding their activities behind IPs that are either stolen or borrowed or bought for the job, or sometimes institutional or state sponsor. So this is what they don't want. They don't want to do it from their own IPs. So they use other IPs. What we do is we are burning those IPs one by one, day in, day out, constantly. And that's how we will solve the problem of hacking. That's the best way of doing it. It's not by outsmarting, it's by outnumbering. All right. So you can see us as some sort of crowdsourced intelligence. This is what we are. If you take a classical CTI, it's based on a lot of machine running fake services, honeypot, simulated services over a couple of hundred servers on a couple of clouds, right? But what we do is 100% different. We are running real servers with real services in all type of environments and connection, and not 200, mind you. We're already 14,000, harnessing the power of more than 30,000 machines around the globe. We are the biggest honeypot ever on Earth so far. So meaning we have a cross-source cyber intelligence and a cross-source CTI, which is extremely efficient. And we want to become the internet trust broker, okay? We want to become the one source of truth that you could turn to and ask, okay, is this thing dangerous or not? And this is where it's entirely new. You just ask a question to our API, because we also have an API. This is the premium product. And we will tell you this IP ABCD, we know it, and it's dangerous. Don't accept it. Don't peer with it. Or maybe this IP is dangerous, but not for you. Maybe it's like running crypto miner worm from whatever, it's a granny computer, and it's not dangerous for you. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's not. You can let it in your web shop, for example. It's highly curated. It's made for your needs only, and you can make either hot query or local cache query. If you have like a high performance network and that you want to interface live, you don't have to do it online. You can do it cold. Obviously, an IPv4, a bad IP is a contextual thing. Before being bad, it was good, and then it's been compromised by a hacker, and then it will be cleaned again by his legitimate owner one day, his administrator, right? And it's only rogue for a short period of time, maybe 72 hours. So what we do is like every 72 hours, we remove all IPs that have not been seen doing crap again, meaning it's an auto-cleaning system. It's a probation period. And if your IP is clean, you don't have to do anything. You will disappear from the ban list. So it's different from what happened before. So we have a consensus chamber to avoid poisoning. So what we do is we have trust rank, right? So those trust rank are speaking for the level of confidence and trust we have toward the person that is reporting an IP. Obviously, it's done automatically by the software, right? But maybe this machine is very recent. We haven't seen it before, right? So why would we trust it? It's there for like 1 or 2 days. It could be hacker. Where there are other machines, they are here for like 6 months, always up and running. And they reported things that we could correlate. So we are sure they are serious. So those are trust rank 1. Trust rank 2, 3, and 4 are people that are either just joined the product, the program, or they are not yet at the top of the ladder. We listen to them, but we don't trust them. So if they have a signal, it has to be validated by either a trust rank 1 actor or us. We are trust rank 0. We also run a honeypot of our own, and we can validate your own decision and your own spottings if we saw them as well. We also have a canary list. It's a number of IPs, a whitelist if you feel that you cannot touch by any means. So if you say, for example, Googlebot is dangerous, well, maybe it's fast, maybe it's consuming a lot of resources, but no, we won't ban it. Gmail either, or Google, whatever, or Microsoft Update, or Akamai, or Cloudflare, and stuff like that. We won't ban them, because it's unlikely they are really dangerous. And even if they are, they have to clean their stuff themselves, and they will do it quickly. We cannot block them. And there are predictive algorithms that are digging in our logs and in our data lake to see if there are emerging patterns like IPA and IPB and IPC and IPD are propagating an attack, but spreading the load. IPA is doing 20% of the job, IPB is doing 30% of the job, and so on and so forth. So we know that IPA, B, C, and D are working together. So if you saw IPA coming to your place, you can directly ban IPB, C, and D because they will come soon for you as well. And once an IPA has been going through all this process, which is actually occurring quite fast, it's in an IP reputation database and it's broadcasted to the user network. All right. So your logs are never exported. It's extremely important. I see a question. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so should I read it for you?
Yeah, sure.
So the first question we have received for you is, CrowdSec is dope. Can I even use it on my temporary project servers? Since I have seen malicious requests many times in my logs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can use it in any context you want. It's super easy to deploy. You have packages for pretty much all architectures and all kind of processors. And if you don't have, you can just pull the resources and compile them. It's done in Go. So it makes sense, yeah, absolutely, to protect your projects with CrowdSec. And the second question I see is about the dashboard, right?
All right, so I'll read it for you, Philippe, if it is okay.
Sure.
Would it not be helpful for the network since I'm not doing things much meaningful? So it is in continuation to the first question the person has asked.
Yeah, well, if you get attacks on your temporary project and see malicious requests, we are interested, right? And even if you don't share nothing with the network, it's still good to protect yourself. It's not a problem. So if you see malicious attacks, yes, we're interested. And if you don't share anything because you don't see anything, it's not a problem. The product is for free. You can definitely use it to protect yourself.
So I'll read the third question for you, Philippe.
Sure.
It says the dashboard part needs Docker to be installed on the machine, right?
Yes. So it's already embedded in the system, right? So when you install CrowdSec, you directly have the Docker container pre-made for you. The only thing you have to know in this is like you cannot run it on a very, very small machine, like with not enough RAM and not enough CPU, because obviously Docker is consuming a bit of resources for itself. So just be careful with this. Don't run it on a machine that has like less than 1 gig or 2 gig of memory. But other than that, it's not a problem. It's already shipped with the software. So back to the slide deck, one important thing is you don't need to share your logs with us. Your logs are treated locally in your premises on your servers. You're not sharing any secret of your customers with us. The only thing we collect when there is an attack is the timestamp of the attack, the offending IP, the IP that's been aggressive to you, and the behavior, the scenario it triggered. So for us European, it's called GDPR compliant because we respect privacy and private data. And you don't have online dependencies. So you don't have to share with us anything if you don't want to. And everything is for free, except if you don't share, right? So it's pretty fair system, I'd say. And how do we make money? So a lot of people were usually asking, how do we make money? Well, if you don't share with us, but you still want to have the CTI part, we monetize it. You can ask our API anytime you want, as many times as you want, whatever you want, but we will bill you for this. So if you don't share anything with us, we will bill you for accessing the API. This is pretty much how we make money. And this API can be leveraged anywhere on your local OS. Soon we will have a Mac port and a Windows port. It's on its way. You can use it in your firewall or, I don't know, in the firmware of your network camera, on your Nginx or on the Lambda or an Apache, in your Arduino project to avoid your IoT devices to be compromised in the JavaScript or PHP environment, whatever, you name it. It can be anywhere and anything. So just to finish the talk, some real-world example that we had. The first one would be this botnet, right? That was using 7,000 IPs to block an IPTV system in Turkey. It was blocked in under a minute by CrowdSec. on a very small machine, like with 2 cores and I think 4 gigs of RAM, really, really small. You can see the use case on our website. And another time we blocked a credit card stuffing campaign thrown by a hacker that wanted to check and double check the credit card numbers he had in his that he was owning. And he was stuffing the payment gateway of the customers with numbers that he wanted to validate and doing only like 0.1, 0.2 euros transactions to check if it was actually an existing number and if it could still be used. And actually, we could block it as well because it was super easy to find the pattern it was using because he was not browsing any product. He was directly jumping into the payment tunnel and from there on, validating the credit card number. So it's pretty easy to fold those kind of attacks because they have like a signature. So yeah, what we propose here, what we offer here is a crowd protection. We use behavior to feed Mr. Reputation, and Mr. Reputation is feeding back Mr. Behavior. And the bigger we get, the best the protection becomes. So now, up to your questions.
We have another question which says, what if an entire subnet goes down due to one malicious user?
So we usually don't block a full subnet, except if the subnet is really bad, right? You can block an IP, and if you see something like, I don't know, 30 to 40 IPs from this subnet flowing, you can decide to block the whole subnet. We would recommend, though, not blocking if you can in most situations, but say if you're on an HTTP layer, send a captcha rather. It's smarter, it's easier, it's safer. But you don't have, but if many IPs coming from the same subnet are doing crap, then you can block the subnet if you want or not, or just block the IPs one by one. If many people are using the same NAT IP, and one is doing crap and there are 3,000 users using the same NAT IP, then the problem is a bit different. Then, we would say, don't block straightforward and try to rather use it a smarter manner to block them, with captcha or two-way or multi-factor authentication and stuff like that. And if you block them, maybe just tell them, like, there is really a lot of things coming from your network, clean it, otherwise we'll block you. You can also do that. And there's another question, I think, Vandana.
Yes, Philippe, it says that what has been the biggest achievement for CrowdSec most recently?
So
that is a quite personal one for you.
Yeah, I love that one. So one of the achievements is like we now have close to 1 million IPs in our database. That's crazy. I mean, 14,000 installation and 500,000 IPs in our database. That is a landmark because we know that we are seeing a meaningful portion of the hacking activity online. And another achievement we had is that we are being installed into main tier 1 hosting providers in the US. I cannot name it, but it's actually deploying machines a lot with the software. And we are seeing traction all over the world. We also are now used in 100 different countries, which is for a software that is close to a year old, quite crazy.
I think we have had enough of questions for today. Now,
okay.
Wrapping up. Yes, thank you, Philippe, for being here and giving your precious time. Philippe is kind enough to give away a CrowdSec hoodie to a lucky winner. Also, we have mentioned in the chat box the link to giveaway form where you will find the questions related to the same session. Giveaway prize for the session is a Try Hack Me voucher and a pair of stickers, so don't forget to fill the form. Once again, I'd express my gratitude on the behalf of whole BSides team to you, Mr. Humeau, for being here and putting up a highly informative session. Now that we are heading towards the end of the day one for BSides Noida Conference 2021, I would like to thank you all for staying tuned and being patient learners. I would also like to congratulate everyone who attempted to answer the questions for giveaway, and irrespective of if you win or lose, you're a winner already. Somebody has rightly said, and I quote, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And on that note, I call an end to the day one. See you all on day two, and hearty thanks to everyone.